Hello and welcome to Nightmare Lullabies. As you settle in for the night, prepare to be immersed in a world of eerie whispers and unsettling tales, designed to both chill and soothe. Now close your eyes, relax, and let the darkness carry you away. And if these nightly tales captivate you, feel free to join our community for more whispered secrets. Kaylin had always been a night owl. The world felt softer after midnight, less crowded, less loud. That's why she picked the 24-hour gym on Ashwood Drive. It wasn't fancy, no juice bar, no yoga classes, just a concrete box with flickering fluorescent lights and rows of machines that smelled faintly of oil and sweat. She liked it that way. During the day, it was packed with grunting lifters and chattering spin class moms, but after 10 p.m., it emptied out. By 1 a.m., it was hers. Just her sneakers squeaking on the rubber mats, her breath syncing with the whir of the treadmill, and the occasional clang of a weight she'd dropped too hard. She'd been going there for months, ever since her new job flipped her schedule upside down. She worked dispatch for a towing company, taking calls from stranded drivers until the early hours. The gym was her release, a way to shake off the static of the headset and the monotony of midnight voices begging for a tow. She'd pack her duffel bag with a change of clothes, a towel, and a protein bar, then drive the 10 minutes from the office to Ashwood Drive. The parking lot was always near empty, just a couple of cars belonging to the night staff or the odd insomniac like her. That Tuesday started like any other. She clocked out at 12:45 a.m., her eyes gritty from staring at a screen too long. The air outside was cool, a faint mist hanging over the asphalt as she pulled into the gym's lot. She grabbed her bag, locked her car, and swiped her keycard at the door. The beep echoed in the quiet, and the glass door swung open. Inside, the air was stale, tinged with that familiar mix of disinfectant and rubber. The front desk guy, Torin, she thought his name was, barely glanced up from his phone. He was always there, a fixture of the night shift, with his hoodie pulled low and his earbuds dangling. She nodded at him, more out of habit than friendliness, and headed for the cardio room. The treadmills faced a wall of windows, but at this hour, they were just black mirrors reflecting her silhouette. She picked her usual machine, third from the left, and set it to a steady 6.5 miles per hour. Her earbuds pumped a lo-fi playlist, nothing too loud, just enough to drown out the hum of the gym. She ran for 40 minutes, her ponytail swinging, her calves burning in that good way. The clock on the wall ticked past 1:30 a.m. She slowed to a walk, wiped the sweat from her forehead with the back of her hand, and stepped off. Next was weights. She moved to the free weight area, a corner of the gym with racks of dumbbells and a few benches. The lights here were dimmer, casting long shadows across the floor. She grabbed a pair of 15-pounders and started her curls, counting silently. 1, 2, 3. The rhythm steadied her. She liked the control of it, the way her muscles tensed and released on her terms. She was halfway through her second set when she heard it. A faint sound, barely there, cutting through the lo-fi beat in her ears. She paused, one arm bent mid-curl, and pulled an earbud out. The gym was silent except for the low buzz of the overhead lights. She held her breath, listening. There it was again, a soft, rhythmic tapping, like fingertips brushing metal. It wasn't loud, not a bang or a crash, just a persistent little pulse, steady as a heartbeat. She lowered the dumbbell and turned her head, scanning the room. The weight racks stretched into shadow, the benches sat empty. Nothing moved. Kaylin shook her head. Old buildings made noises. She'd lived in enough creaky apartments to know that. Maybe it was a pipe, or the air vents kicking on. She popped her earbud back in and finished her set, but the tapping lingered in her mind, a splinter she couldn't pull out. She moved to the leg press next, sliding into the seat and adjusting the weight to 120 pounds. Her legs pushed against the platform, slow and deliberate, but her eyes kept drifting to the edges of the room. The mirrors along the wall reflected her, sweaty and focused, but beyond that, just darkness. She finished her workout around 2 a.m. Her shirt clung to her back, and her water bottle was nearly empty. She slung her bag over her shoulder and headed for the locker room. The swinging door creaked as she pushed it open, the sound sharp in the stillness. Inside, the air was cooler, heavy with the scent of chlorine from the showers and the musty tang of damp towels. The locker room was a long rectangle. Rows of gray lockers on either side, benches down the middle, and a line of shower stalls at the far end. A single fluorescent strip flickered overhead, casting a pale glow that didn't quite reach the corners. She dropped her bag on a bench and unlaced her sneakers, peeling off her socks. The tile was cold against her bare feet. She was reaching for her towel when the tapping came again, clearer this time, closer. It wasn't in her head. It was coming from the lockers, maybe 10 feet away, near the end of the row. Tap, tap, tap. Slow, deliberate, like someone testing a drum. Kaylin froze, her hand hovering over her bag. Her pulse ticked up, a faint throb in her ears. She turned her head slowly, peering down the row. The lockers stood silent, their doors shut tight, no gaps, no movement. The tapping stopped, leaving only the drip-drip of that leaky showerhead she'd complained about weeks ago. She exhaled, a shaky laugh escaping her lips. "Get a grip," she muttered to herself. She was tired, that was all. Too many late nights, too much caffeine. She grabbed her towel and stood, her legs stiff from the workout. The showers were calling, hot water to rinse off the sweat and the weirdness. She padded across the tile, her footsteps echoing faintly. The tapping didn't come back, but as she reached the shower stalls, she couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. Like the air was heavier now watching her. She glanced over her shoulder, half expecting to see someone standing by the lockers. Nothing, just shadows and steel. She stepped into the stall, pulled the curtain shut, and turned the knob. The water came on with a hiss, steam rising around her. She stood under the spray, letting it pound against her shoulders, washing away the unease. For a moment, it worked. The sound of the water drowned out everything else, her thoughts, the gym, that stupid tapping. She closed her eyes, tipping her head back, and let herself relax. But when she turned off the water and stepped out, towel wrapped around her, the silence hit her like a wall. And then, tap, tap, tap. Sharper now, insistent, coming from the locker right beside hers. Her stomach dropped. She clutched the towel tighter, water dripping from her hair onto the tile. The sound wasn't random anymore. It had a rhythm, a purpose. Like someone or something wanted her to hear it. Kaylin stood there, dripping onto the locker room tile, her towel clutched tight against her chest. The tapping, sharp, deliberate, cut through the silence like a needle. It was coming from the locker next to hers, so close she could almost feel the vibration through the floor. Tap, tap, tap. It wasn't loud, but it was relentless, a rhythm that gnawed at her nerves. She stared at the row of lockers, their gray metal doors glinting faintly under the flickering light. Her breath caught in her throat, shallow and quick, as she tried to make sense of it. She wasn't one to scare easily. Growing up, she'd been the kid who climbed trees in thunderstorms, who laughed at her brother's ghost stories instead of hiding under the covers. But this was different. This wasn't a story or a dare. This was real, happening right now in a place she'd come to think of as hers. The gym was supposed to be safe, predictable. Not this. The tapping stopped, abrupt as a light switching off. The silence that followed was worse, thick, expectant, like the room was holding its breath. Kaylin swallowed, her throat dry despite the steam still clinging to her skin. She took a step back, her bare foot sticking slightly to the tile, and glanced around. The locker room stretched out in both directions, benches, lockers, the shadowed shower stalls at the far end. Nothing moved. No one was there. Just her, alone with the echo of that sound. She forced herself to move. She edged toward her bag, keeping the locker in the corner of her eye. It was number 47, the one she always used, third from the end of the row. The one next to it, 48, was where the tapping had come from. She didn't know why she was so sure of that, but she was. The sound had been too close, too precise. Her hands shook as she pulled her hoodie from her bag, the fabric damp from her wet arms as she yanked it on. She didn't bother with her socks or sneakers, just shoved her feet into them, laces flapping, and grabbed her duffel. She was halfway to the door when it started again. Tap, tap, tap. Slower this time, almost mocking. She froze, her hand on the door's push bar, and looked back. Locker 48 stared at her, its door still shut, but the sound was unmistakable. Her stomach twisted. She wanted to run, to get out and never look back, but something held her there. A stubborn streak, maybe, or the need to prove she wasn't losing it. "Okay," she whispered to herself, her voice barely audible over the drip of the shower head. "Okay, fine." She let her bag slide to the floor, and took a step toward the locker. The tapping didn't stop. It kept its slow, steady pace like it was waiting for her. She reached out, her fingers hovering over the latch of 48. The metal was cold, slick with condensation. She hesitated, her heart beat loud in her ears, then gripped the handle and pulled. The door creaked open, a low groan that made her wince. Inside, the locker was empty. Just a bare metal shelf, a couple of hooks, and a faint smell of rust. No one hiding, no loose object rattling around. Nothing to explain the sound. She stared into the emptiness, her breath fogging in the cool air. The tapping stopped again, leaving her standing there, hands still on the door, feeling foolish and exposed. She slammed it shut, the bang echoing through the room. "Stupid," she muttered, turning back to her bag. She was overtired, imagining things. That was it. She slung the duffel over her shoulder and pushed through the swinging door, the gym's main floor a welcome relief. The lights were brighter here, the air less heavy. Torin was still at the desk, scrolling on his phone, oblivious. She thought about saying something. "Hey, your locker room's creepy as hell." But what was the point? He'd just shrug like he always did. She headed for the exit, her wet hair sticking to her neck, her sneakers squeaking with every step. The glass doors slid open and the night air hit her, crisp, damp, a faint drizzle starting to fall. She made it to her car, tossed her bag in the back, and slid into the driver's seat. The engine sputtered to life, and she cranked the heat, rubbing her hands together. She was about to pull out when she glanced at the gym through the windshield. The windows reflected the parking lot lights, but something caught her eye, a flicker of movement inside. She squinted, leaning forward. It was hard to tell through the glass, but it looked like someone was standing near the cardio room, just beyond the treadmills. A silhouette, tall and still, facing her direction. She blinked, and it was gone. Probably Torin, she told herself, doing a late sweep. Except Torin never left the desk. She drove home faster than usual, the wipers swiping at the drizzle, her mind replaying that tapping over and over. Her apartment was a small one-bedroom on the edge of town, all beige carpet and thrift store furniture. She locked the door behind her, double-checked it, and dropped her bag by the couch. A hot shower, another one, helped, but sleep didn't come easy. She lay in bed, the streetlight seeping through the blinds, and listened to the quiet. No tapping, just the hum of the fridge and the occasional car passing outside. The next night, she almost didn't go back. She sat in her car after work, staring at the gym's sign, Ashwood Fitness, open 24/7, and debated calling it quits. But she'd paid for the month, and she wasn't about to let a weird noise ruin her routine. She grabbed her bag and went in, nodding at Torin like nothing had happened. The cardio room was the same, the treadmills humming under her feet. She kept her earbuds in, volume low, half listening for anything strange. Nothing, just the usual gym sounds. She finished her workout later than the night before, closer to 2:30 a.m. The weight room was uneventful, her sets uninterrupted. She was almost relaxed by the time she headed for the locker room. The swinging door creaked as she pushed it open, and she stepped inside, her bag thumping onto the bench. She unlaced her sneakers, peeled off her sweaty shirt, and reached for her towel. The air felt colder tonight, the chlorine smell sharper. She was about to head for the showers when it happened again. Tap, tap, tap. Her head snapped up. It was coming from locker 48, just like before. She stood there, frozen, her towel dangling from her hand. The sound was louder now, not aggressive, but insistent, like it was calling her back. She stared at the locker, its door shut tight, and felt a chill crawl up her spine. She hadn't imagined it. Not last night, not now. Something was in there, or someone. She backed away, her bare feet silent on the tile, and grabbed her bag. She wasn't sticking around to find out what it was. Not tonight. She pushed through the door, her heart pounding, and made for the exit. Torin glanced up as she passed, his brow furrowing slightly. "You okay?" he asked, his voice flat. "Yeah," she lied, forcing a smile. "Just tired." He nodded, already back to his phone. She didn't stop moving until she was in her car, doors locked, engine running. The tapping echoed in her head all the way home, a rhythm she couldn't shake. And as she pulled into her parking spot, she realized something. She hadn't heard it stop this time. It had followed her out. Kaylin didn't sleep much that night. She lay in bed, the sheets tangled around her legs, staring at the ceiling as the tapping replayed in her head. It wasn't just the sound itself. It was the way it had followed her, lingering like a shadow she couldn't shake. She'd locked her apartment door, checked the windows, even turned on an extra light in the hall, but none of it helped. Every creak of the building, every hum of the radiator made her tense, waiting for that rhythm to start again. Tap, tap, tap. It didn't come, but the absence only made her more restless. By morning, she was bleary-eyed, sipping coffee that tasted like burnt grounds. She sat at her kitchen table, a wobbly thrift store find, and scrolled through her phone half distracted. She almost texted her friend Vesper about it, but what would she say? "Hey, I keep hearing weird noises at the gym, and I'm freaking out." Vesper would laugh, tell her to switch to yoga or something. Kaylin didn't want to hear it. She wasn't crazy. She wasn't imagining things. Something was off at Ashwood Fitness, and she needed to know what. She spent her day off pacing her apartment, replaying the last 2 nights. The tapping wasn't random. It was tied to locker 48, always that same spot. She'd opened it once, found nothing, but that didn't mean there wasn't something to find. Maybe she'd missed it in her rush to get out. Maybe it was a loose bolt, a prank, or, worst case, someone messing with her. The thought made her skin prickle. She didn't scare easy, but she wasn't naive either. People could be strange, especially at a 24-hour gym where the night shift drew all kinds of loners. By evening, she'd made up her mind. She wasn't quitting the gym. She'd worked too hard to build her routine, but she wasn't ignoring this either. She'd go back, same time, same place, and figure it out. She packed her duffel with purpose. Gym clothes, towel, water bottle, and on impulse, her phone charger and a small flashlight she kept in her car. If she was going to poke around, she'd be ready. The drive to Ashwood Drive felt longer that night. The drizzle had turned to a steady rain, streaking her windshield, the wipers thudding in time with her pulse. She pulled into the lot just after midnight, the gym's neon sign buzzing faintly through the wet haze. Torin was at the desk when she swiped in, his hoodie up, his eyes flicking to her for a second longer than usual. "Late again," he said, more statement than question. "Yeah," she replied, keeping her tone casual. "Couldn't sleep." He grunted, already back to his phone. She headed for the cardio room, her sneakers squeaking on the damp floor. The treadmills were empty, the windows black as ever. She set her pace at 6.0 this time, slower, saving her energy. Her earbuds stayed in her bag. She wanted to hear everything tonight. The hum of the machine filled the space, steady and familiar, but her ears strained for anything else. No tapping. Not yet. She finished her run around 1:15 a.m., her legs warm but not spent. The weight room was next, dumbbells, leg press, the usual. She kept her movements deliberate, her eyes darting to the corners of the room. The mirrors reflected her, pale and focused, but nothing else. No shadows, no silhouettes. It was almost disappointing. She wanted something to happen, something she could confront. By 2 a.m., she was done. Her shirt clung to her back, her hair damp with sweat. She grabbed her bag and headed for the locker room, her flashlight tucked into her hoodie pocket. The swinging door creaked as she pushed it open, the sound louder in the stillness. The air hit her, cold, sharp with chlorine, the same musty undertone as always. She dropped her bag on the bench and stood there, listening. The drip-drip of the shower head was the only sound, steady as a metronome. She walked to locker 48, her steps slow, deliberate. The metal gleamed faintly under the flickering light, its latch still and silent. She stared at it, her breath fogging in the cool air. "Come on," she muttered, half to herself, half to whatever was behind this. She reached out, her fingers brushing the handle, and waited. Nothing. No tapping, no movement. Just a locker. She pulled it open, the creak echoing through the room. Empty again, shelf, hooks, rust. She clicked on her flashlight, the beam cutting through the shadows. She swept it over the interior, checking every corner. The back wall was scratched, the paint chipped, but nothing unusual. She ran her hand along the shelf, feeling for anything loose, a screw, a dent. It was solid, cold, unyielding. She stepped back, frowning. If it wasn't the locker itself, then what? She turned, scanning the row. Maybe it was a trick, sound bouncing off the tile, coming from somewhere else. She walked the length of the room, her flashlight beam bouncing off the lockers, the benches, the shower stalls. The drip-drip grew louder as she neared the showers, but that was it. No tapping, no clues. She was about to give up when she heard it. Tap, tap, tap. Her heart lurched. It was faint, muffled, but unmistakable, coming from behind her, back toward locker 48. She spun around, the flashlight trembling in her grip. The sound was slower tonight, almost lazy, like it knew she was listening. She strode back to the locker, her sneakers slapping the tile, and yanked the door open again. Empty. But the tapping didn't stop. It kept going, steady and soft, like it was mocking her. She slammed the door shut, the bang ringing in her ears. "Fine," she snapped, her voice sharp in the quiet. "You want to play? Let's play." She grabbed her phone from her bag and set it on the bench, hitting record. If this was real, she'd catch it. She stood there, flashlight in one hand, staring at locker 48 as the tapping continued. Her phone's screen glowed, the seconds ticking by, 10, 20, 30. The sound didn't falter. After a minute, she stopped the recording and played it back. Her breathing was loud, ragged, but there it was, tap, 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 faint but clear. Proof. She wasn't imagining it. She saved the file, her hands steadier now, and turned back to the locker. "What are you?" she whispered, not expecting an answer. The tapping paused, just for a second, then picked up again, faster, sharper, like it was responding. She took a step back, her confidence wavering. This wasn't a loose bolt or a prank. It was deliberate, directed at her. She grabbed her bag, ready to leave, when something caught her eye. A faint scratch on locker 48's door, one she hadn't noticed before. It was small, barely an inch long, etched into the paint. She leaned closer, the flashlight beam steady. It wasn't random. It was a letter, K. Her breath hitched. K for Kaylin? No, that was ridiculous, paranoid. It could be anything, someone's initial, a mark from years ago. But it hadn't been there last night, she was sure of it. She traced it with her finger, the edge rough against her skin. The tapping stopped again, the silence sudden and heavy. She pulled her hand back, her pulse racing, and backed toward the door. She didn't hear Torin until he spoke. "Everything okay in here?" His voice was low, casual, but it made her jump. He was leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed, his hoodie shadowing his face. "Yeah," she said, too quick. "Just checking something." He tilted his head, his eyes flicking to locker 48. "Heard a bang. Thought you dropped something." "Just the door," she lied, hoisting her bag higher. "I'm heading out." He nodded, stepping aside as she brushed past. She could feel his gaze on her back all the way to the exit. The rain was heavier now, drumming against her car as she climbed in. She locked the doors, her phone still clutched in her hand, that recording burning a hole in her pocket. The K scratched into the locker stared at her in her mind, sharp and unyielding. And as she pulled out of the lot, she swore she heard it again, tap, 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 faint against the rain. Kaylin didn't go straight home that night. The rain hammered her windshield, the wipers struggling to keep up, but she couldn't face her apartment yet. Not with that recording sitting in her phone like a live wire. The scratched K, on locker 48, burned in her mind, too specific to dismiss, too strange to explain. She pulled into a 24-hour diner a few miles from the gym, a rundown place with peeling vinyl booths and fluorescent lights that buzzed like trapped flies. She needed coffee, noise, something to ground her. The waitress, a woman with tired eyes and a name tag that read Maris, barely glanced at her as she slid a chipped mug across the counter. Kaylin wrapped her hands around it, the heat seeping into her palms, and stared at the steam curling upward. Her phone sat on the table, screen dark, taunting her. She'd recorded the tapping, proof she wasn't losing it. But now what? She couldn't just ignore it, not after seeing that mark. She took a sip of the coffee, bitter and too hot, and unlocked her phone. The file was there, timestamped 2:17 a.m. She hesitated, her thumb hovering over the play button. The diner's hum, clinking dishes, a low TV in the corner, felt like a flimsy shield against whatever she might hear. She plugged in her earbuds, keeping the volume low, and hit play. At first, it was just her breathing, quick and uneven, then the faint drip of the shower head. And there it was, tap, 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 soft but clear, a rhythm that tightened her chest. She closed her eyes, focusing. It was steady, deliberate, just like she remembered. But then, something else. A sound she hadn't noticed in the moment. Behind the tapping, faint and warped, was a low murmur. Not words, not exactly, just a hum, like someone exhaling through clenched teeth. Her eyes snapped open. She rewound the clip, turning the volume up, and listened again. The tapping dominated, but the murmur was there, threading through it, rising and falling. It wasn't mechanical, not a pipe or a vent. It was human. Her stomach churned. She yanked the earbuds out, the diner's noise rushing back. The coffee sat untouched now, cooling in the mug. Someone had been there, someone close enough for her phone to pick up their breath. But she'd been alone, hadn't she? The locker room had been empty, the door shut until Torin showed up. Torin. His voice cut through her memory, heard a bang. And the way he'd looked at locker 48. Had he been closer than she thought? She didn't like where this was going. Torin was a fixture at the gym, always there, always watching his phone. She'd never thought much of him, quiet, bored, typical night shift drone. But now every detail stuck out. His timing, his questions, the way he'd lingered in the doorway. She shook her head, trying to shake off the suspicion. She was jumping to conclusions. The murmur could have been anything, her own echo, a trick of the tile. Still, she couldn't unhear I. She paid for the coffee and drove home, the rain a steady drumbeat against her car. Her apartment felt smaller that night, the walls too close. She locked the door, checked it twice, and sank onto the couch with her phone. She played the recording again, earbuds in, lights on. The tapping, the murmur, it was all there unchanged. She paused it at the 45-second mark, where the murmur peaked, and strained to make it out. No words, just that low, guttural hum. She shivered, pulling a blanket over her legs. Sleep wasn't an option, not with that sound in her head. She opened her laptop instead, transferring the file to analyze it better. She wasn't a tech expert. Dispatch training didn't cover audio forensics, but she'd seen enough crime shows to know the basics. She downloaded a free sound editing program, something simple with waveforms and sliders. The file loaded, a jagged line spiking with each tap. She zoomed in, isolating the murmur. It was faint, buried under the tapping, but it had a shape, peaks and dips like a voice trying to break through. She played it back, slowing it down. The tapping stretched into a dull thud, the murmur into a long, distorted groan. It still wasn't clear, no word she could catch, but it felt alive, intentional. She leaned back, her laptop warm against her thighs, and stared at the screen. Whoever or whatever made that sound had been there in the locker room with her. The next night, she almost didn't go to the gym. She stood in her kitchen, duffel bag at her feet, debating. But the recording, the unanswered questions, they gnawed at her. She wasn't running from this. She grabbed her bag, her flashlight, and a cheap pocket knife she dug out of a drawer, not for fighting, just for feeling less helpless. The drive was quiet, the rain lighter now, a faint patter on the roof. Torin was at the desk when she swiped in, his hoodie low, his phone glowing. "Back again," he said, not looking up. "Yeah," she replied, her voice steady. "Can't stay away." He didn't respond, just tapped at his screen. She headed for the cardio room, her routine a cover now. She ran for 30 minutes, her pace uneven, her mind elsewhere. The weight room followed, curls, presses, nothing heavy. She kept her earbuds out, listening. No tapping tonight, just the gym's usual drone. By 2 a.m., she was sweaty, restless, and ready. The locker room door creaked as she pushed it open, her flashlight already in hand. The air was cold, the chlorine sharp. She dropped her bag and walked straight to locker 48, her sneakers silent on the tile. The K was still there, scratched into the door, stark under her beam. She traced it again, her finger lingering. The tapping didn't come, not yet. She pulled her phone out, set it to record, and placed it on the bench. "Let's try this again," she muttered, her voice echoing faintly. She opened locker 48, the creak louder this time. Empty, as expected. She swept the flashlight inside, checking every inch, shelf, hooks, corners. Nothing new. She stepped back, waiting. The drip-drip of the shower head filled the silence, but no tapping. She paced the row, her beam bouncing off the lockers, her shadow stretching across the tile. The room felt heavier tonight, the air pressing against her skin. She was near the showers when it started. Tap, tap, tap. Her breath caught. It was back, faint, distant, but growing louder. She turned, pinpointing it. Locker 48 again. She strode over, her flashlight steady, and stood in front of it. The tapping quickened, insistent, like it sensed her. She hit record on her phone, holding it closer this time. "Come on," she whispered. "Show me." The sound sharpened, tap, 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 then stopped. Silence. She waited, her pulse loud in her ears. Then a creak. Not from the locker, but from the door. She spun around, flashlight up. Torin stood there, his silhouette framed in the doorway, his hands in his pockets. "You're here a lot," he said, his tone flat. "So are you," she shot back, her voice tighter than she meant. He shrugged, stepping inside. "Part of the job. Heard you talking. Everything okay?" "Yeah," she said, lowering the flashlight. "Just checking something." He nodded, his eyes drifting to locker 48. "That one giving you trouble?" Her stomach twisted. "What do you mean?" "Nothing," he said, too quick. "Just looks old. They all are." He turned, heading back out, but not before glancing at her phone on the bench. The door swung shut behind him, the creak fading into the quiet. Kaylin exhaled, her hands shaking. She stopped the recording, 2 minutes this time, and played it back. The tapping was there, clear as ever, but so was something else. A faint shuffle, then Torin's voice, distant but audible. And behind it, that murmur again, low, guttural, alive. She stared at the locker, the K glaring back, and realized she wasn't alone in this. Not anymore. Kaylin stood in the locker room, her flashlight beam trembling on locker 48, the K etched into its door like a brand. Torin's footsteps had faded beyond the swinging door, but his presence lingered, his words, his glance at her phone, the way he'd singled out that locker. The recording still played in her earbuds, the tapping sharp, the murmur haunting, and now Torin's voice layered into it, casual but heavy. She stopped the playback, yanking the earbuds out, and let the silence settle. The drip-drip of the showerhead was the only sound, but it felt like a lie, like the room was holding something back. She couldn't leave it like this. Not with the murmur, not with Torin acting like he knew more than he let on. She'd come here to find answers, not to run scared, and she wasn't about to let him, or whatever this was, push her out. She grabbed her phone, shoving it into her pocket, and slung her bag over her shoulder. The flashlight stayed in her hand, a small comfort against the cold metal and shadows. She took one last look at locker 48, the tapping silent now, and pushed through the door. The gym's main floor was dim, the cardio machines humming faintly under the flickering lights. Torin was back at the desk, slouched in his chair, his hoodie pulled low. His phone glowed in his hands, casting a pale light on his face. He didn't look up as she approached, but she knew he heard her. Her sneakers squeaked on the rubber mats, her breath too loud in the quiet. She stopped a few feet away, her shadow stretching across the counter. "Hey," she said, her voice steady despite the knot in her stomach. "We need to talk." He glanced up, his eyes half-lidded, like she'd interrupted something. "About what?" "Locker 48. She watched his face, searching for a flinch, a tell. "You said it was old. What else do you know?" He shrugged, leaning back in his chair. "Nothing special. They're all old. Place has been here forever." "Don't bullshit me," she snapped, sharper than she meant. She softened her tone, but not her grip on the flashlight. "You've heard it, haven't you? The tapping." His fingers paused on his phone, just for a second, then resumed scrolling. "Heard what?" "The noise. In the locker room. It's been happening every night I'm here. Always that same locker. And you show up right after, asking questions. What's going on?" He set the phone down, slow and deliberate, and met her gaze. His eyes were dark, unreadable, but there was something there, a flicker of recognition maybe. "You're hearing things," he said, his voice flat. "Old buildings creak. That's all." "I recorded it," she said, pulling her phone out. She held it up, the screen still dark. "It's not creaking. It's tapping, deliberate. And there's a voice in it, Torin. A murmur. You were there tonight when it happened." His jaw tightened, barely noticeable, but she caught it. He leaned forward, elbows on the counter, and studied her. "You're serious. Dead serious." She tapped the phone against her palm, her heart thudding. "I've got proof. And I'm not the only one who's been in there. Someone's messing with me, or something's wrong with that locker. You work here. You've got to know something." He didn't answer right away. The rain drummed against the windows, a steady roar that filled the silence. Finally, he sighed, rubbing a hand over his face. "Look, I don't know what you think you heard. I've been here years, nights mostly. People come and go. They complain about noises sometimes. Pipes, vents, whatever. I don't hear anything special." "Then why'd you ask about 48? She pressed. "You singled it out. And that mark, the K scratched on it. That's new. I've been using 47 for months, and it wasn't there before." He frowned, genuine confusion crossing his face, or a good act. "A mark? I don't know anything about that. I don't mess with the lockers." Cleaning crew does, maybe. Cleaning crew. She hadn't seen anyone else at night, not in months. Who's that? Comes in early mornings, like 4 a.m. Don't know their names. They're in and out. He shrugged again, but it felt forced this time. If something's up with 48, maybe they've seen it. She didn't buy it. Not completely. Torin wasn't rattled, but he wasn't convincing either. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. I'm not dropping this. If you're not straight with me, I'll figure it out myself. But if you know something, if someone's screwing around in there, you'd better tell me now. He held her stare, then leaned back, hands up. I'm not hiding anything. Check the locker, talk to the manager, do what you want. I just sit here. She didn't respond, just turned and headed back to the locker room. Her pulse raced, adrenaline mixing with frustration. Torin wasn't giving her much, but his reaction, the pause, the dodge, told her he wasn't clueless. She pushed through the swinging door, the creak sharp in the stillness. The air was colder now, the chlorine biting at her nose. She dropped her bag and walked to locker 48, flashlight on, phone ready. The K glared back unchanged. She set her phone to record again, placing it on the bench, and opened the locker. Empty, as always, shelf, hooks, rust. She swept the beam inside, then tapped the back wall with her knuckles. Solid. No hollow spots, no loose panels. The tapping didn't come, not yet. She stepped back, scanning the row, her light bouncing off the metal. Come on, she muttered, her voice echoing. If you're here, show me. She waited, her breath fogging in the cool air. The drip-drip of the shower head ticked on, but nothing else. She was about to give up when she heard it, tap, tap, tap. Faint, distant, but growing louder. Her stomach dropped. It was back, same rhythm, same locker. She grabbed her phone, holding it closer, the red recording light blinking. The tapping quickened, sharper now, like it was answering her. She stood there, flashlight steady, watching the door. It didn't move, no creaks, no gaps, but the sound was undeniable. She whispered into the phone, "It's happening again." 2:38 a.m. locker 48. The tapping paused, then started again, louder, insistent. She backed up, her sneakers silent on the tile, and waited. A shadow flickered in her peripheral vision, quick, gone before she could turn. She swung the flashlight, the beam cutting through the room. Nothing. Just lockers, benches, shadows. Her heart pounded, but she held her ground. "Who's there?" she called, her voice sharper than she felt. No answer, just the tapping, relentless now. The door creaked behind her. She spun, flashlight up. Torin again, leaning in the doorway, his hoodie shadowing his face. "You're still at it," he said, his tone dry. "You heard that, right?" she demanded, pointing at 48. "Tell me you heard it." He tilted his head, listening. The tapping stopped, abrupt as a cut wire. Silence. He shook his head. "Didn't hear anything. You sure you're okay?" "Don't," she snapped, stepping toward him. "Don't play dumb. It was loud right there. You were close enough." He didn't flinch, just crossed his arms. "I was at the desk. Came back, 'cause you're yelling. That's it." She glared at him, her flashlight beam steady on his chest. "Then why do you keep showing up? Every time it happens, you're here. Explain that." "I work here," he said, slow and deliberate. "You're the one who keeps coming back, poking around. Maybe you're stirring something up." Her breath caught. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing." He turned, heading out. "Just saying, old places have history." "Night." The door swung shut, leaving her alone. The tapping didn't restart, but the silence felt heavier now, charged. She stopped the recording, 5 minutes this time, and played it back. Her voice, the tapping, clear as ever. And there, faint but real, Torin's footsteps, his words, and that murmur again, low and alive. She stared at locker 48, the K mocking her, and realized he was right about one thing. She wasn't letting this go. Not now. Kaylin didn't move for a long moment after Torin left. The locker room pressed in around her, the silence thick and oppressive, broken only by the steady drip-drip of the shower head. Her flashlight beam rested on locker 48, the scratched K glaring back like a challenge. Torin's words hung in the air. Old places have history. And they stuck, digging into her thoughts. He hadn't admitted anything, but he hadn't denied it either. She wasn't sure what scared her more, that he knew something or that he didn't. She played the recording again, earbuds in, her back to the bench. The tapping was crisp, insistent, her own voice tight with frustration. Torin's footsteps shuffled in, his words clipped, and there it was, the murmur, low and guttural, weaving through the sound. She paused it, rewound, listened closer. It wasn't just noise. There was a cadence to it, a rise and fall, like someone trying to speak but choking on the words. Her skin prickled. She stopped the playback, shoving her phone into her pocket. She needed more than recordings, she needed answers. Torin wasn't talking, not yet, but he'd given her something, the cleaning crew. If they came at 4 a.m., they might have seen, or heard, what she had. She checked her phone, 2:45 a.m. She could wait, catch them when they arrived. Her bag sat heavy on her shoulder, her flashlight warm in her grip. She wasn't leaving until she had something solid. She headed back to the main floor, avoiding Torin's gaze as she passed the desk. He didn't look up, just tapped at his phone, the glow reflecting off his hoodie. She settled in the cardio room, picking a treadmill near the window. The machine hummed under her feet, a slow walk to kill time. Her eyes flicked between the clock and the gym's entrance, waiting. The rain had eased outside, a faint shimmer on the asphalt. At 3:30 a.m., she stopped, her legs restless, and moved to a bench near the weight room, flashlight off but ready. The gym felt emptier now, the lights dimmer, like it was shrinking around her. At 4:02 a.m., a van pulled into the lot, white dented, no logo. Two figures climbed out, their shapes blurred by the drizzle. Kaylin watched through the window as they approached, carrying mops and a bucket. The door beeped as they swiped in, and Torin barely acknowledged them, just a nod before sinking back into his phone. They were older, both women with gray-streaked hair and faded uniforms. One headed for the bathrooms, the other toward the locker room. Kaylin grabbed her bag and followed. The woman didn't notice her at first, her mop slapping the tile as she worked. Kaylin cleared her throat, stepping into the doorway. "Hey," she said, keeping her voice soft. "Can I ask you something?" The woman looked up, her eyes sharp despite the fatigue in her face. "What's that?" Her voice was rough, like she smoked too much. "The lockers," Kaylin said, nodding toward 48. "Ever hear anything weird in here? Like tapping." The woman paused, leaning on her mop. "Tapping?" She squinted, then shrugged. "Place creaks sometimes. Old pipes." "Why?" "It's specific," Kaylin pressed, stepping closer. "Locker 48. Every night I'm here, it taps, like someone's inside. And there's a mark on it now, a K." The woman's expression shifted, just a flicker, surprise, maybe recognition. She glanced at the locker, then back at Kaylin. "You're here a lot, huh?" "Enough," Kaylin said. "Enough to know it's not pipes." The woman sighed, wiping her hands on her uniform. "Look, I don't mess with the lockers much. We mop, empty trash, that's it. But yeah, people talk. Years back, someone said that one made noises. Before my time. Figured it was just stories." "Stories?" Kaylin's pulse quickened. "What kind?" "Dunno. Gym rats exaggerating. Lost stuff, weird sounds. One guy swore it ate his keys." She snorted, but it sounded forced. "Never saw anything myself. But," she hesitated, her eyes flicking to 48. "Sometimes I hear it too. Late shifts, when it's quiet. Thought I was imagining it." Kaylin's breath caught. "You've heard it." "Maybe," the woman said, guarded now. "Faint, like you said. Tapping. Figured it's the building settling. This place is ancient. Been here since the 80s. "And the mark?" Kaylin asked, pointing. "The K?" The woman stepped closer, peering at the door. "Huh, that's new. Wasn't there last week." She ran a finger over it, frowning. "Kids, probably. People scratch stuff all the time." Kaylin didn't buy the casual tone. "It showed up 2 nights ago, right when the tapping got worse." The woman shrugged again, but her grip tightened on the mop. "Not my business. I clean. That's all." She turned back to her work, the conversation over. Kaylin watched her for a moment, then walked to locker 48. She opened it, empty as always, and swept her flashlight inside. The rust on the back wall caught her eye, darker than she remembered. She leaned in, the beam steady, and noticed something. The rust wasn't random. It flaked in patterns, faint but their lines, curves, almost like letters. She grabbed her phone, snapping a photo. The flash lit up the locker, and she zoomed in. The rust traced a shape, an R, maybe, or a K again, distorted by time. Her stomach twisted. She tapped the back wall, harder this time, and it echoed, hollow, not solid like before. She froze. There was something behind it. She stepped back, her mind racing. The tapping started, tap, 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 slow, deliberate, right on cue. She hit record, holding her phone close. The sound grew louder, sharper, like it knew she was onto it. She didn't flinch this time, just listened, her flashlight on the rust. The cleaner glanced over, her mop still, but didn't say anything. The tapping stopped after a minute, leaving the drip-drip to fill the quiet. Kaylin played the recording back, earbuds in. The tapping, her breathing, and there. The murmur, clearer now, a low groan that stretched into something like a word. She slowed it down, her hands trembling. It wasn't gibberish. It was a name, Kaylin. Dragged out, warped but unmistakable. Her blood ran cold. She yanked the earbuds out, staring at the locker. The cleaner was watching her now, her eyes narrowed. "You okay?" "No," Kaylin said, her voice shaking. "It said my name." The woman's face paled just for a second before she masked it. "You're hearing things. Tired, probably." She turned away, mopping faster. Kaylin didn't argue. She grabbed her bag and left, the recording burning in her pocket. She passed Torin at the desk. He didn't look up, but she felt his attention. The rain was a drizzle now, cool against her skin as she climbed into her car. She locked the doors and sat there, staring at the gym through the wet windshield. The rust, the murmur, her name, it wasn't random. Something or someone knew her. She drove home, the road blurring past. At her apartment, she locked herself in and pulled out her laptop, uploading the photo and recording. The rust shape was clearer on the screen, an R, not a K. Not her initial, someone else's. She searched online, Ashwood Fitness, history, anything. An old news article popped up, buried in a local archive. 1987, a man named Rylan, a night worker, died in a gym accident. Crushed by a collapsing wall during renovations. The gym rebuilt, reopened, but the lockers stayed, original, untouched. Her breath hitched. "Rylan! R!" She played the recording again, slowing it to a crawl. "Kaylin!" It groaned, but now she heard something else. Rylan, faint, overlapping like two voices fighting to be heard. She slammed the laptop shut, her hands cold. No ghosts, no spirits, just echoes trapped in rust and steel, stirred by her presence. Her name, her routine, waking something long buried. She didn't go back to Ashwood Fitness. She canceled her membership, drove past it one last time. Lights on, Torin at the desk, oblivious or complicit. The tapping stopped when she stopped listening. But sometimes at night she swears she hears it, tap, 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 faint against the rain. Drennan had always been a creature of habit. He liked order, schedules, lists, the way things fit into place. The gym was part of that, a steady anchor after a year that had unraveled everything else. He'd started going to the old warehouse gym on Vesper Street 6 months ago. After the breakup left him with too much time and not enough focus. It wasn't a fancy place, no polished floors, no smoothie bar, just a cavernous space with rusted barbells, cracked mirrors, and a faint smell of mildew that never quite went away. He didn't mind. It was cheap, quiet, and close to his apartment. He'd go 5 nights a week, always after 9 p.m. when the crowds thinned out. The day shift at his warehouse job, stacking boxes, scanning shipments, left him wired, his muscles itching for something more. He'd pack his gym bag with the essentials: a faded tank top, shorts, a water bottle, and a pair of beat-up lifting gloves. The drive to Vesper Street was short, just 10 minutes through the industrial sprawl of warehouses and empty lots. The gym's parking lot was a patchwork of gravel and weeds, lit by a single flickering street lamp. He'd pull in, lock his car, and swipe his keycard at the door, the beep cutting through the night's quiet. Inside, the air was cool and stale, the hum of the overhead fans mixing with the clank of weights. The front desk was usually empty. Some kid named Gavin worked days, but nights were unmanned, just a sign-in sheet no one bothered with. Drennan liked it that way. He didn't come for small talk or high fives. He came to lift, to feel the burn in his arms and chest, to drown out the noise in his head. He'd start with cardio, 20 minutes on the bike, his legs pumping steady, the machines squeak a familiar rhythm. Then weights, bench press, squats, rows, each set counted out in his mind. The mirrors were everywhere, floor-to-ceiling panels lining the walls. He hated them at first, too much of himself staring back, too exposed, but he'd gotten used to it. They reflected the gym's sprawl. The cardio corner, the weight racks, the benches scattered like islands. Most nights, it was just him and a handful of others, regulars he recognized but never spoke to. A woman with a buzz cut who ran the treadmill like she was chasing something. An older guy with a limp who stuck to the leg press. Quiet types like him, keeping to themselves. That Monday, he got there around 9:30 p.m. The lot was emptier than usual, just his car and a rusted pickup near the back. He swiped in, the door clicking shut behind him, and headed for the bike. The gym was silent except for the fans, the lights buzzing faintly overhead. He pedaled for 20 minutes, his breath sinking with the motion, his tank top already sticking to his back. The mirrors showed him alone, no buzz-cut woman, no limping guy. Just him, the machines, and the shadows stretching across the floor. He moved to the weight room, grabbing a barbell from the rack. The steel was cold against his gloves, the knurling rough under his palms. He loaded it with 135 pounds, light for him, a warm-up, and started his squats. 1, 2, 3, he counted silently, his eyes fixed on the mirror ahead. It was habit, watching his form, keeping his spine straight. But halfway through the set, something shifted. A flicker in the reflection, just behind him. He paused, barbell resting on his shoulders, and squinted. The mirror showed the weight room, racks, benches, the dim corner near the back. But there was someone there now. A man, sitting on a bench by the far wall, half hidden in shadow. Drennan hadn't heard him come in, no footsteps, no clank of weights. He was just there. Tall, wiry, with a shaved head that caught the light. He wasn't lifting, wasn't stretching, just sitting, hands on his knees, staring. Drennan lowered the bar, the clang loud in the quiet, and turned his head slightly. The guy didn't move, didn't look away. His eyes were locked on Drennan, unblinking, steady as stone. A chill crawled up Drennan's spine, not fear, not yet, just unease. Gyms had weirdos sometimes. He'd seen enough late-night oddballs to know that. He shook it off, re-racked the bar, and moved to the bench press. He loaded 185 pounds, slid onto the bench, and gripped the bar. His reflection stared back, sweat beading on his forehead, but the man was still there, same spot, same stare. Drennan pushed through his reps, the weight heavy but manageable, his breath puffing out in bursts. He kept the guy in his peripheral vision, waiting for him to do something, lift, leave, anything. Nothing, just that gaze fixed and silent. After 3 sets, Drennan sat up, wiping his face with his tank top. He turned fully this time, ready to nod or say something. "Hey, you good?" But the bench was empty. No man, no trace. Just the gym, quiet and still. He frowned, scanning the room. The cardio area was dark, the exit door shut. No one could have left that fast, not without a sound. He stood, his legs stiff, and walked to the bench. The vinyl was cool, untouched, no sweat, no imprint. He told himself it was nothing. Tired eyes, a trick of the mirrors. He finished his workout, rows, curls, a quick stretch, keeping the weight room in sight. No one else came in, no sounds but his own. By 11 p.m., he was done, his muscles aching in that good way. He grabbed his bag and headed out, the night air sharp against his skin. The pickup was still in the lot, rusted and silent. He didn't look at it too long. Back home, his apartment was a small box of mismatched furniture and unpacked boxes. He showered, the hot water rinsing off the sweat and the weirdness, and crashed on the couch with a beer. The TV flickered, some late-night rerun, but his mind stayed on the gym. That stare, that sudden absence. He didn't like it, but he didn't dwell. Routines were routines. He'd go back tomorrow, same time, same place. The next night he did. He swiped in at 9:45 p.m., the lot empty except for his car. The gym was the same, fans humming, mirrors gleaming. He started on the bike, his legs pumping, his eyes on the reflection. The weight room was dark, empty. He finished cardio, moved to the barbell, loaded it up. Mid-squat he saw it again, the man, same bench, same stare. Shaved head, wiry frame, eyes like pins. Drennan froze, the weight heavy on his shoulders, and held the gaze in the mirror. The guy didn't blink. He lowered the bar, slower this time, and turned. The bench was empty again. No sound, no movement, just the gym, mocking him with its silence. His pulse ticked up, but he didn't leave. He finished his set, his hands tight on the steel, and kept going. The man didn't reappear, not that night. But Drennan felt it, a weight beyond the barbell pressing down. Something had started, and it wasn't letting go. Drennan didn't sleep well after that second night. He'd come home from the gym, the man's stare stuck in his head like a splinter, and crashed on the couch with the TV on low. The hum of late-night infomercials usually knocked him out, but not this time. He'd close his eyes, and there it was, those unblinking eyes pinned on him through the mirror, vanishing the second he turned. He told himself it was nothing, fatigue, shadows, his mind playing tricks. But it didn't feel like nothing. It felt like something watching him back. By morning, he was gritty-eyed, his coffee too weak to cut through the fog. He dragged himself to work. Another shift at the warehouse, hauling boxes under fluorescent lights that buzzed like flies. The routine kept him steady, scan, stack, repeat. But his thoughts drifted to Vesper Street, to that bench in the weight room, empty 1 second, occupied the next. He didn't mention it to anyone, not his co-workers, not the barista who handed him his second coffee. What was there to say? Some guy keeps staring at me at the gym, and then disappears? He'd sound unhinged. He almost skipped the gym that night. He stood in his apartment, gym bag at his feet, staring at the clock, 8:45 p.m. His muscles ached for the burn, but his gut twisted at the thought of going back. He hated that feeling, hesitation, doubt. It wasn't him. He'd built this routine to take control, not to let some weirdo derail it. He grabbed his bag, his gloves, his water bottle, and headed out. The drive was quiet, the streets slick with a light drizzle, the warehouse district a blur of gray and rust. He pulled into the lot at 9:20 p.m. The rusted pickup was there again, parked crooked near the back, its windows dark. He didn't linger on it, just locked his car and swiped in. The gym was the same as ever. Fans whirring, lights flickering, the air cool and musty. No one at the desk, just the sign-in sheet curling at the edges. He scanned the room, empty for now. The mirrors reflected the machines, the benches, his own silhouette in the tank top and shorts. He headed for the bike, his warm-up spot, and climbed on. He pedaled for 20 minutes, his legs pumping steady, his breath sinking with the squeak of the chain. He kept his eyes on the mirror ahead, watching the weight room behind him. Nothing moved, no flicker, no shadow. Just the gym, quiet and still. He finished, wiped the sweat from his brow, and moved to the weight rack. He loaded a barbell with 155 pounds, still light, testing himself, and started his squats. The steel was cold, the knurling sharp against his gloves. He counted silently, 1, 2, 3, his reflection steady in the mirror. Mid-set, he saw it. The man was back, same bench, same spot near the back wall, half in shadow. Tall, wiry, shaved head glinting under the lights. Hands on his knees, eyes locked on Drennan. No lifting, no stretching, just staring. Drennan's grip tightened on the bar, his squat faltering for a second. He didn't stop, didn't turn, just kept going, counting louder in his head to drown out the unease. 4, 5, 6. The man didn't move, didn't blink. He finished the set, the bar clanging as he re-racked it, and straightened up. The mirror showed the guy still there, unyielding. Drennan's pulse ticked up, a steady thud in his ears. He wasn't imagining this, not twice, not 3 times. He turned his head, slow and deliberate, ready to say something. "What's your deal?" But the bench was empty again. No sound, no footsteps, just the gym's hum. He stared at the spot, the vinyl cool and unmarked, no sign anyone had been there. His jaw clenched. This wasn't right. He grabbed his water bottle, took a long swig, and scanned the room. The cardio area was dark, the exit door shut. No one could move that fast, not without a trace. He walked to the bench, his sneakers quiet on the mats, and ran a hand over the surface. Dry cold, no sweat, no warmth. He checked the mirrors, the angles, maybe a reflection trick, some optical glitch. But the sightlines didn't lie. The guy had been there, clear as day, then gone. Drennan didn't leave. Not yet. He wasn't running from this. He'd faced worse than a creepy stare. He moved to the bench press, loaded 195 pounds, and slid under the bar. His reps were slower now, his eyes darting to the mirror between lifts. Nothing. Just him, the weights, the shadows. He finished 3 sets, his chest burning, and sat up, wiping his face. The gym stayed empty, no regulars, no noise. He stretched, his hamstrings tight, and kept watch. By 11 p.m., he was done. He grabbed his bag and headed out, the drizzle cool against his skin. The pickup was still in the lot, silent and dark. He glanced at it, then away, climbing into his car. The drive home was a blur, his mind stuck on that bench, those eyes. He He showered, crashed on the couch, the TV flickering. Sleep came eventually, fitful and shallow, the stare lingering in his dreams. The next night, he went back. He had to. Routine was routine, and he wasn't letting this guy win. He swiped in at 9:40 p.m., the lot empty except for that damn pickup. The gym was quiet, the fans whirring, the mirrors gleaming. He started on the bike, his legs pumping, his eyes on the weight room's reflection. 10 minutes in, he saw it, the man, same bench, same stare. Shaved head, wiry frame, hands on knees. Watching. Drennan didn't flinch this time. He kept pedaling, counting the seconds. 1, 2, 3, holding the gaze in the mirror. The guy didn't move, didn't blink, just stared back, steady and cold. Drennan finished his warm-up, stepped off the bike, and grabbed his bag. He wasn't playing this game tonight. He walked to the weight room, his steps deliberate, and stopped a few feet from the bench. "Hey," he said, his voice low but firm. "You got a problem?" The man didn't answer, didn't twitch, just stared, his eyes dark and flat, like they weren't even human. Drennan's skin prickled, but he held his ground. Say something or get lost. Silence. He stepped closer, ready to grab the guy's arm, shake him out of it, but the bench was empty. No sound, no blur of movement. Just gone. Drennan spun around, scanning the room, mirrors, racks, shadows. Nothing. His breath came fast, his fists clenched. He checked the bench, cold, dry, untouched. He didn't finish his workout that night. He grabbed his bag and left, the drizzle heavier now, soaking his tank top. The pickup sat in the lot, its windows fogged, but he didn't look too long. He drove home, locked his door, and sat on the couch, water dripping onto the floor. The TV stayed off, the quiet pressing in. He didn't know what this was, some creep, some trick. But it was real, and it was targeting him. He went back the next night anyway. Routine was routine, but this time he brought his phone, set to record. If the guy showed up, he'd catch him. Proof, something to hold on to. He swiped in, started his bike, and waited, eyes on the mirror. The man appeared, same bench, same stare. Drennan hit record, aiming the phone over his shoulder, and kept pedaling. The gaze didn't waver, cold and relentless, following him through the glass. Drennan didn't sleep at all that night. He got home from the gym, his tank top still damp from the drizzle, and locked the door behind him with a hard click. The recording sat in his phone, a weight he could feel through his pocket. He didn't play it, not yet. He showered instead, the hot water pounding his shoulders, trying to rinse off the stare that wouldn't leave him. It didn't work. Those eyes, dark, unblinking, fixed on him through the mirror, stayed burned into his mind, sharper than the steam fogging the bathroom. He crashed on the couch, his gym bag dumped by the door, his phone on the coffee table. The apartment was quiet, just the hum of the fridge and the faint patter of rain outside. He stared at the ceiling, the shadows shifting with every car that passed. He'd recorded the guy, proof, finally, but the thought of watching it made his stomach twist. What if it showed nothing? What if it showed too much? He didn't know which scared him more. Morning came gray and slow. He dragged himself to work, the warehouse a blur of boxes and beeping scanners. His hands moved on autopilot, lift, stack, scan, but his head was back at Vesper Street, on that bench, those eyes. He kept his phone close, the recording unplayed, a silent nag in his pocket. By the end of his shift, his resolve hardened. He wasn't imagining this. He'd seen the guy 3 nights in a row, felt that stare like a physical thing. The video would settle it, one way or another. He got home around 6 p.m., the sky still heavy with clouds. He dropped his work boots by the door, grabbed a beer from the fridge, and sank onto the couch. His phone sat there, screen dark, daring him. He took a long swig, the cold biting his throat, and unlocked it. The video was time-stamped 10:03 p.m., 2 minutes long. He plugged in his earbuds, better to hear everything, and hit play. The screen flickered to life, the camera shaky from his grip on the bike. The weight room stretched out behind him, dim and grainy, the racks, the benches, the mirrors reflecting the overhead lights. His own shoulder filled the bottom frame, moving slightly with each pedal. He held his breath, waiting. At 15 seconds, there it was, the man. Same bench, same spot near the back wall. Tall, wiry, shaved head catching the light. Hands on his knees, staring straight at the camera. Straight at Drennan. His chest tightened. The guy didn't move, just sat there, eyes locked, unblinking even in the shaky footage. Drennan paused the video, the frame frozen on that face. It was blurry, the gym's dim lighting smudging the details, but those eyes cut through, dark, flat, relentless. He zoomed in, the image pixelating, but the stare held. No expression, no flicker, just a wall of focus aimed at him. He unpaused it, letting it play. The audio kicked in, his breathing, ragged from the bike, the squeak of the pedals, the faint hum of the fans. No footsteps, no sound from the man. Just silence where there should have been something. Anything to mark his presence. At 1 minute, Drennan's voice came through, low and tense. "Hey, you got a problem?" The man didn't react. Not a twitch, not a blink. Then, at 1:20, the camera shifted as Drennan stepped off the bike. The frame swung toward the bench, and it was empty. No blur, no fade. Just gone. Drennan stopped the video, his beer warm in his hand. He rewound to the last frame of the man, 1:19, then advanced it 1 second at a time. At 1:20, the bench was bare, the vinyl gleaming under the lights. No sign he'd ever been there. His stomach sank. This wasn't a trick of the mirror, not some reflection glitch. The guy was real, on video, in focus, then vanished. He played it again, volume up, earbuds tight. His breathing, the bike, the hum, and something else. A faint rustle, barely audible, right before the man disappeared. He paused, rewound, cranked the volume. There it was, soft, like fabric brushing metal, then nothing. He frowned, replaying it. The rustle came at 1:18, just before he spoke, just before the guy was gone. It wasn't much, but it was something, proof the man had moved, not just vanished into thin air. He set the phone down, his mind racing. This wasn't his imagination. The video showed what he'd seen. A guy watching him, disappearing faster than anyone could move. He didn't know how, maybe a trick, a trapdoor or something, but it was real. And it was personal. That stare wasn't random, it was aimed at him, night after night. He didn't go to the gym that night. He stayed in, the TV on low, the beer untouched after that first sip. He watched the video again, then again, memorizing the man's shape, the way he sat, the rustle before he vanished. By midnight, he'd decided. He'd go back, but not blind. He'd watch closer, record more, figure this out. He wasn't letting some creep, or whatever this was, chase him off. The next night, he packed his bag with purpose. Gloves, water, phone fully charged. He added a small flashlight, not the gym's flickering lights, but something he could control. The drive to Vesper Street was tense, the drizzle back, streaking his windshield. The lot held the rusted pickup, same spot, windows fogged. He parked, swiped in, and scanned the gym. Empty, quiet, the mirrors reflecting nothing but machines. He started on the bike, phone propped on the handlebars, recording from the start. He pedaled slow, eyes on the weight room's reflection. 10 minutes in, the man appeared, same bench, same stare. Shaved head, wiry frame, hands on knees. Drennan didn't flinch, just kept going, counting silently, letting the camera roll. The gaze bored into him, cold and steady, but he didn't look away. At 15 minutes, he stopped, stepped off, and grabbed his phone. He walked to the weight room, flashlight in one hand, camera in the other, aimed at the bench. "Hey," he said louder this time. "You gonna sit there all night, or what?" The man didn't move, didn't blink, just stared, eyes locked through the lens. Drennan stepped closer, the flashlight beam cutting through the dimness, landing on the guy's face. Pale, sharp, no expression. "Say something," Drennan snapped, his voice echoing. The man stayed silent, statue still. Drennan was 5 feet away now, the camera steady, the flashlight bright. He took another step, and the bench was empty. No rustle, no blur, just gone. The beam swept the spot. Vinyl, metal, nothing else. He spun around, checking the mirrors, the racks. Empty. He stopped the recording, his hands shaking slightly. 2 minutes this time. He played it back, right there in the weight room, earbuds in. His pedaling, his voice, the hum. And there, at 1:45, that rustle again, fainter but real. The man was on screen 1 second, gone the next. Drennan rewound, froze the frame, those eyes staring straight into him. He didn't know what this was, but it wasn't stopping. And neither was he. Drennan didn't finish his workout that night. After the man vanished from the bench, again, he stood there, flashlight beam slicing through the weight room's shadows, his phone warm in his hand. The recording was still running, catching the hum of the fans, his own ragged breathing, but nothing else. He stopped it, the silence hitting him hard, and played it back one more time. The rustle was there, faint but real, right before the guy disappeared. It wasn't enough, not yet, but it was something. He wasn't crazy. The video proved it. He grabbed his bag and left, the gym's quiet pressing against his back. The drizzle had thickened, a steady tap against his hood as he crossed the lot. The rusted pickup was still there, parked crooked near the back, its windows fogged and dark. He'd seen it every night, same spot, same stillness, and never thought much of it. Now it loomed, a question he couldn't ignore. He slowed as he passed, his flashlight flicking over the dented fender, the chipped paint. No plates, no stickers, just rust and grime. He didn't stop, didn't touch it, just kept walking to his car. The drive home was tense, the wipers thudding in time with his pulse. His apartment felt smaller when he got in, the walls too close, the quiet too loud. He locked the door, dropped his bag, and sank onto the couch with his phone. He watched the new video again, earbuds in, the man's stare cutting through the grainy frame. That rustle, soft, deliberate, nagged at him. It wasn't footsteps, not quite. More like a shift, a slide, something moving out of sight. He needed more. He didn't sleep much. The TV stayed off, the rain drumming outside, his mind stuck on Vesper Street. By morning, he was wired. Coffee didn't help, just made his hands shake. Work was a slog, the warehouse's monotony a dull ache against his racing thoughts. The pickup kept surfacing, always there, always silent. It had to mean something. The man didn't walk in, didn't leave through the door. Not that Drennan ever saw. Maybe the truck was part of it, a piece he'd missed. He got off at 5 p.m., the sky a heavy gray, and drove straight to the gym. Not to work out, to check. The lot was emptier during the day, just a couple cars near the entrance. The pickup was gone. He parked, grabbed his flashlight, and walked the gravel, scanning for tire marks, anything. The spot where it usually sat was a patch of weeds and dirt, no outline, no oil stains, just bare ground. He frowned, kicking at the gravel. It didn't make sense. A truck that old should have left something. He swiped in, the gym brighter now, alive with daytime noise, weights clanking, voices overlapping. Gavin was at the desk, a lanky kid with a mop of curls, flipping through a magazine. Drennan approached, keeping it casual. "Hey," he said, leaning on the counter. "That pickup in the lot. You know who drives it?" Gavin glanced up, chewing gum. "What pickup?" "Rusted old. Parks out back at night." The kid shrugged. "Don't see much out there. Night shift's Torin's deal. I'm out by 8. He popped his gum, already back to his magazine. "Torin." Drennan's brow furrowed. "He's night crew." "Yeah. Closes up like 3 a.m. Ask him." Gavin didn't look up. Drennan nodded, filing it away. Torin. He hadn't seen a night guy, not in months, just the empty desk. Maybe Torin was new, or maybe Drennan had been too locked in his routine to notice. He left, the pickup's absence gnawing at him. He'd go back tonight, same time but smarter. He stopped by a hardware store on the way home, picking up a cheap tripod, nothing fancy, just something to steady his phone. If the man showed up, he'd catch him clean, no shakes, no excuses. He got to Vesper Street at 9:45 p.m., the drizzle a steady hum against his car. The pickup was back, same spot, windows fogged. He stared at it, his flashlight off, his breath fogging the windshield. No movement, no lights, just a hulking shape in the dark. He grabbed his bag, phone, tripod, flashlight, and swiped in. The gym was quiet, the fans whirring, the mirrors reflecting empty machines. No Torin, no desk guy, just the sign-in sheet untouched. He set up in the cardio room, propping the tripod on the bike, aiming it at the weight room. He hit record, the red light blinking, and started pedaling. His legs moved slow, deliberate, his eyes on the mirror. 10 minutes in, the man appeared, same bench, same stare. Shaved head, wiry frame, hands on knees. Watching. Drennan didn't react, just kept going, counting silently, letting the camera roll. The gaze was a weight, pressing through the glass, but he held steady. At 20 minutes, he stopped, stepped off, and checked the tripod. Still recording, clear view. He grabbed his flashlight and walked to the weight room, keeping the bench in sight. The man didn't move, just stared, eyes locked on him, cold and flat. Drennan raised his voice, firm but calm. "You're on camera now. What's your deal?" No answer, no twitch. Just that stare. Drennan stepped closer, flashlight up, the beam landing on the guy's face, pale, sharp, expressionless. "Say something," he said louder. "Or get out." The man didn't blink. Drennan was 3 feet away now, the camera still rolling behind him. He took another step, and the bench was empty. No rustle, no blur, just gone. The flashlight swept the spot, vinyl, metal, nothing. He spun around, checking the mirrors, the racks. Empty. The tripod stood steady, red light on. He grabbed it, stopped the recording, 5 minutes this time, and played it back, earbuds in. His pedaling, his voice, the hum. And there, at 4:40, that rustle again, sharper now. The man was on screen, clear, in focus, then gone, the bench bare. Drennan rewound, froze the frame. Those eyes, staring straight into the lens, straight into him. He didn't leave yet. The pickup was out there, a link he couldn't ignore. He packed his gear and headed to the lot, the rain heavier now, soaking his hood. The truck sat silent, windows fogged, no sign of life. He circled it, flashlight off, didn't want to spook anyone inside. The fender was dented, the paint flaking, but something caught his eye. A faded sticker on the tailgate, barely legible. He leaned closer, squinting through the wet. Vesper Storage, it read, the letters chipped and worn. His pulse quickened. Storage, a unit nearby, maybe tied to the gym. He stepped back, the rain drumming against his shoulders, and snapped a photo with his phone. The truck didn't move, didn't hum, no engine, no heat. Just a shell, parked night after night. He climbed into his car, locked the doors, and stared at it through the windshield. The man, the truck, connected somehow. He didn't know how yet, but he'd find out. He drove home, the photo and recording burning in his pocket. His apartment was cold, the rain a steady roar outside. He uploaded the video to his laptop, watching it again. The rustle, the stare, the sudden absence. He Googled Vesper Storage. A facility 2 blocks from the gym, old and run down, matching the truck's vibe. No hours listed, just an address. He'd check it tomorrow after work. Sleep didn't come easy. The stare followed him into his dreams, cold and relentless, but he wasn't backing down. Not now. Drennan woke with a start, the couch springs digging into his back, his laptop still open on the coffee table. The screen glowed faintly, the video paused on that frozen frame. The man's stare, cold and unyielding, locked through the lens. Rain tapped against the window, a steady rhythm that matched the thud in his chest. He drifted off sometime after 3 a.m., chasing leads online, Vesper Storage, the gym, anything that might connect the dots. Now, morning light seeped through the blinds, gray and thin, and his resolve was sharper than ever. He showered quick, the water barely warm, and downed a coffee that tasted like grounds. Work loomed, another shift at the warehouse, but his mind was on Vesper Street, on that pickup and the storage yard 2 blocks away. The sticker on the tailgate, Vesper Storage, was the first solid thread he'd pulled, and he wasn't letting it slip. He packed his gym bag with the usual gloves, water, phone, but added the tripod and flashlight just in case. He'd hit the storage place after his shift, before the gym. The warehouse was a slog, the hours dragging under fluorescent buzz and the clatter of boxes. He kept his phone close, the photo of the pickup sticker a silent nag. By 5 p.m., he was out, the sky heavy with clouds, the air damp and cool. He drove straight to Vesper Storage, a rundown lot tucked behind a chain-link fence 2 blocks from the gym. The sign was faded, the S half gone, and the gate hung crooked, rusted hinges creaking as he pushed it open. The yard was a maze of metal units, dented, weathered, some padlocked, some gaping open. The pickup wasn't there, not that he could see, but tire tracks cut through the gravel, fresh enough to stand out. He walked the rows, his boots crunching, his flashlight off but ready. The place was quiet, no cars, no voices, just the wind rattling a loose panel somewhere. He checked unit numbers, looking for anything tied to the gym, the truck, the man. Nothing jumped out, just rust and neglect. Near the back, he found a small office, a prefab shack with a cracked window and a closed sign taped crooked on the door. He knocked anyway, the sound sharp in the stillness. No answer. He peered through the glass, dark, empty, a desk piled with papers, a flickering bulb dangling from the ceiling. He tried the knob, locked. He stepped back, scanning the yard again. The tire tracks led to a unit in the corner, number 17, its door shut tight, a padlock glinting in the dim light. He snapped a photo, the flash too bright against the gray. The unit didn't look special, same rust, same dents, but those tracks stopped right there. He crouched, running a hand over the gravel. The marks were deep, recent, matching the pickup's wide tires. His pulse ticked up. This was it, had to be. He didn't have bolt cutters, didn't have a key, but he wasn't leaving empty-handed. He grabbed a rock from the ground, small but heavy, and tapped the padlock. It held, the clank echoing too loud. He stopped, glancing around, no one. He didn't break in, not yet. He'd come back with something better, maybe after the gym. He He drove to Vesper Street next, the lot dim under the drizzle. The pickup was there, same spot, windows fogged. He parked far enough to watch it, his phone out, snapping another photo. No movement, no lights, just a shell like always. He swiped in at 9:50 p.m., the gym quiet, the fans whirring. No Torin, no desk guy, just the mirrors gleaming and empty. He set up on the bike, tripod on, recording from the start. His legs pumped slow, his eyes on the weight room's reflection. 10 minutes in, the man appeared, same bench, same stare. Shaved head, wiry frame, hands on knees. Watching. Drennan didn't flinch, just pedaled, counting silently, letting the camera roll. The gaze was a pressure, relentless, but he held it, staring back through the mirror. At 20 minutes, he stopped, grabbed the tripod, and walked to the weight room. The man didn't move, just stared, eyes flat and cold. Drennan aimed the camera, flashlight up. "You're tied to that truck, aren't you?" he said, his voice steady. "Unit 17. I found it." No answer, no twitch. He stepped closer, the beam on the guy's face, pale, sharp, no expression. "Talk," he said louder. "Or I'm digging deeper." The man didn't blink. Drennan was 3 feet away, the camera rolling, the flashlight bright, and the bench was empty. No rustle, no blur, just gone. He swept the beam, vinyl, metal, nothing. He checked the mirrors, the racks, empty. The tripod's red light blinked steady. He stopped the recording, 4 minutes this time, and played it back, earbuds in. His voice, the hum, that faint rustle at 3:50. The man on screen, then gone. He didn't leave yet. The truck was outside, the storage yard 2 blocks away. He packed his gear and headed to the lot, the rain heavier now, soaking his hood. The pickup sat silent, fogged windows staring back. He circled it, flashlight on low, and checked the tailgate. Vesper storage, still there. He tapped the fender, the metal cold and wet, and peered at the windows. Too fogged to see inside, but something moved, a shadow quick and faint, gone before he could focus. His breath caught. He stepped back, flashlight up, and rapped on the driver's window. "Hey," he called, firm but not loud. "I know you're in there." No answer, no sound, just the rain drumming steady. He tapped again, harder. Nothing. He circled to the passenger side, the beam cutting through the wet, and saw it. A crack in the fog, a thin line where the window had shifted just an inch. Someone had been inside, venting it. He didn't open it, didn't dare, but he snapped a photo, the crack clear in the flash. His heart thudded, the rain cold against his neck. He backed off, heading to his car, the truck looming behind him. He locked the doors, started the engine, and drove home, the photos and recording burning in his pocket. His apartment was dark when he got in, the quiet heavy. He uploaded the video, watched it again, the stare, the rustle, the absence. He Googled Vesper storage again, digging deeper. An old forum post popped up, years back, someone complaining about a creepy guy hanging around the units, watching people load stuff. No name, no follow-up, just a vague match to the gym's vibe. He leaned back, the laptop warm on his lap. The truck, the storage, the man, it was tying together, but not clear yet. He went back to the gym the next night, tripod and flashlight ready. He set up on the bike, recording, and waited. The man appeared, same bench, same stare. Drennan didn't speak this time, just pedaled, watching back, letting the camera catch it. At 20 minutes he stopped, approached, and aimed the lens. The man stared, unblinking, and Drennan held his ground. Then the bench was empty. He checked the recording, rustle at 3:40, gone at 3:41. Consistent, predictable, but still no why. He left, the pickup waiting in the lot. He didn't knock this time, just watched from his car, the rain a steady roar. A shadow moved inside, faint through the fog, and he snapped a photo. It wasn't enough, not yet, but it was close. He'd crack this, one way or another. Drennan couldn't shake the shadow in the truck. It had moved, barely, just a flicker through the fogged window, but it was enough. Enough to keep him up that night, his apartment dark, the rain a steady hum against the glass. He'd watched the latest recording again, the man's stare cutting through the grainy frame, the rustle sounding sharper each time he replayed it. The photos sat on his phone, the storage unit, the pickup's cracked window. Pieces of a puzzle he was close to solving. He wasn't scared anymore, not exactly, just tired and determined. He went to work the next day, the warehouse a blur of boxes and noise, but his mind was on Vesper Street. He'd end this tonight, one way or another. After his shift, he stopped by the hardware store again, picking up a slim crowbar, not for breaking in, just for leverage if he needed it. He packed his gym bag with the usual phone, tripod, flashlight, plus the crowbar, its weight a cold comfort. The drizzle was back as he drove to the gym, the lot dim and quiet. The pickup was there, same spot, windows fogged. He parked, watching it for a moment, but saw no movement. He swiped in at 9:55 p.m., the gym empty, the fans whirring low. A guy was at the desk this time. Torin, Gavin had called him, slouched in a hoodie, scrolling his phone. Drennan nodded as he passed, but Torin didn't look up. He sat up on the bike, tripod on, recording from the start. His legs pumped slow, his eyes on the weight room's reflection. 10 minutes in, the man appeared, same bench, same stare. Shaved head, wiry frame, hands on knees. Watching. Drennan didn't react, just pedaled, counting silently, letting the camera roll. At 20 minutes, he stopped, grabbed the tripod, and walked to the weight room. The man didn't move, just stared, eyes flat and cold. Drennan aimed the camera, flashlight up. "I know about the truck," he said, his voice steady. "Unit 17. You're not just sitting here, you're hiding something." No answer, no twitch. He stepped closer, the beam on the guy's face, pale, sharp, no expression. "Last chance," he said louder. "Talk." The man didn't blink. Drennan was 3 feet away, the camera rolling, and the bench was empty. No rustle this time, just gone. He swept the flashlight, vinyl, metal, nothing. He checked the mirrors, the racks, empty. The tripod's red light blinked steady. He stopped the recording, 4 minutes, and played it back, earbuds in. His voice, the hum, no rustle, just silence where the man vanished. He frowned. Different this time. Progress, maybe. He didn't stay. The truck was outside, the real key. He packed his gear and headed to the lot, the rain light but cold. The pickup sat silent, fogged windows staring back. He circled it, flashlight low, crowbar in his bag. The cracked window caught his eye, still open, just an inch. He tapped it with the flashlight, the glass dull under the beam. "Hey," he called firm. "I know you're in there. Come out." No answer, no sound, just the rain. He slid the crowbar from his bag, keeping it low, and wedged it into the crack. He didn't want to break it, just pry it open, see inside. The glass shifted, groaning slightly, then popped loose, sliding down an inch more. The air inside was stale, heavy with mildew and something sharper, sweat maybe. He aimed the flashlight through the gap, the beam cutting through the dark. A figure slumped in the driver's seat, tall, wiry, shaved head. The man! Drennan's breath caught, but he didn't move, just watched. The guy didn't stir, his hands limp in his lap, his face turned away. Drennan tapped the window again, harder. "Hey!" No response. He leaned closer, the beam steady, and saw it. Pale skin, too pale, eyes half open, staring at nothing. Not at him, not anymore. He stepped back, his stomach lurching. Dead. The guy was dead, had been for a while, by the look of it. The smell hit him then, faint but real, seeping through the crack. He yanked the crowbar out, the glass scraping, and stumbled to his car. He locked the doors, hands shaking, and called 911. "There's a body," he said, his voice tight. "Pick up in the lot at Vesper Street Gym. Been there a while." Cops showed up fast, 2 cars, lights flashing, cutting through the drizzle. Drennan stayed back, watching from his car as they pried the door open, the rain streaking their jackets. They pulled the guy out, stiff, pale, wiry frame slumping against the gravel. Torin came out, hoodie up, talking to an officer, gesturing at the gym. Drennan didn't hear it, just watched, the scene blurring through his wet windshield. They questioned him after, a cop with a notepad and tired eyes. "You know him?" "No," Drennan said, honest. "Saw him in the gym, staring. Found him out here tonight." "How long you been seeing him?" "Few nights. Recorded it, got videos." He showed them, the clips shaky but clear. The man on the bench, vanishing night after night. The cop watched, frowning, but didn't say much, just took his number, told him to stay available. They towed the truck, the lot emptying out by 1 a.m. Torin locked up, glancing at Drennan as he left, but said nothing. Drennan drove home, the rain a faint patter now, his hands steady on the wheel. His apartment was quiet when he got in, the recording still on his phone, the crowbar heavy in his bag. He didn't watch them again, not yet. The next day he dug online, news trickled out slow, but enough. Guy's name was Tavern, mid-40s, no family, no address. Lived in the truck, parked at the gym for weeks, maybe months. Died of a stroke or overdose. Cops weren't sure yet, waiting on tests. He'd been a regular once, years back, before the gym changed hands, then faded out. No one noticed him staying, watching, until Drennan did. He went back to Vesper storage that weekend, the crowbar in his trunk. Unit 17 was open now, cops had been through. Empty, just junk and dust, a gym bag with rotted clothes. Taverns, probably. No answers, just echoes of a life left behind. Drennan walked away, the gate creaking shut behind him. He kept going to the gym after that. Routine was routine. The bench stayed empty, the mirrors reflecting only him, the weights, the hum. Torin nodded sometimes, a quiet acknowledgement, but they didn't talk. The pickup was gone, the lot bare. Drennan watched the recordings one last time, late at night, the rain soft outside. The stare, the rustle, the absence, proof of a man who'd watched too long, until he couldn't anymore. He deleted them after, the files vanishing with a click. The gym was his again, quiet, steady, his own. But sometimes, mid-set, he'd glance at the mirror, half expecting those eyes. They never came back. The rain washed it all away. Cypher had always preferred the quiet hours. The world was too loud during the day, cars honking, phones buzzing, people crowding every corner. She'd found her peace in the night, when the streets emptied out and the air settled. That's why she picked the graveyard shift at the gym. A sleek, modern place on Juniper Lane, all glass walls and neon signs that glowed against the dark. It wasn't her first choice. She'd rather be home with a book or her sketch pad. But the pay was decent and the solitude suited her. She'd signed up for the 3 a.m. slot 6 months ago, after her old job at a coffee shop went under. The gym was a franchise, one of those 24-hour chains that never slept, but it slowed to a crawl after midnight. By 3 a.m., it was hers, just her, the machines, and the hum of the air conditioning. She'd pack a small bag, leggings, a tank top, her beat-up sneakers, and a pair of earbuds she rarely used. The drive from her apartment was short, 10 minutes through quiet streets, the city a blur of shadows and streetlights. The parking lot was always near empty when she arrived, just her hatchback and maybe a stray car from a late-night regular. She'd swipe her keycard at the door, the beep sharp in the stillness, and step inside. The air smelled of rubber mats and faint disinfectant, the lights bright but cold, reflecting off the glass walls. The front desk was unmanned at that hour, no clerk, just a clipboard with a pen dangling from a chain. She'd scribble her name, Cypher, no last initial, and head for the cardio room. She liked the ellipticals best, smooth, steady, no jarring thuds like the treadmills. She'd set it to a moderate pace, her legs moving in rhythm, her breath syncing with the machine's hum. The gym stretched out around her. Rows of bikes and rowers, a weight room with racks of steel, mirrors lining every wall. Most nights she was alone, no chatter, no grunting lifters, just the quiet she craved. She'd crank her music low, a playlist of ambient beats, and let the hours slip by. That Wednesday started like any other. She pulled into the lot at 2:55 a.m., the sky a deep, cloudless black. Her headlights swept over the asphalt, empty, no other cars. She grabbed her bag, locked her hatchback, and swiped in. The gym was silent, the neon sign buzzing faintly outside. She signed the clipboard, her pen scratching the paper, and headed for the ellipticals. The lights flickered once as she stepped onto the machine. Nothing unusual, just old wiring, but she noticed it, a quick blink in the quiet. She started her warm-up, 20 minutes on the elliptical, her sneakers squeaking softly against the pedals. The mirrors reflected her, short hair tucked behind her ears, tank top clinging to her shoulders, but the gym beyond was still empty. She liked it that way, the solitude wrapping around her like a blanket. After cardio, she moved to the weight room. Nothing heavy, just light dumbbells for her arms, a few squats with a kettlebell. The steel was cool against her palms, the rhythm steadying her. She finished around 3:45 a.m., her muscles warm, her breath even. She grabbed her water bottle, took a sip, and stretched on a mat near the mirrors. The gym was hers, empty, predictable, until she heard it. A faint sound, sharp against the hum. A squeak, then a scrape like rubber dragging on tile. She paused mid-stretch, her head tilting toward the noise. It came from the locker room, just beyond the weight area. a low echo through the swinging door. Cypher stood, her water bottle still in hand, and listened. The squeak came again, slow, deliberate, followed by a soft thud. She frowned, brushing it off at first. Old buildings made noises, pipes, vents, the usual. But this wasn't random. It had a rhythm, a purpose, like someone moving inside. She glanced at the clock. 3:50 a.m., too early for the cleaning crew, too late for a straggler. She was supposed to be alone. She grabbed her bag, slinging it over her shoulder, and walked toward the locker room. The door was heavy, its hinges creaking as she pushed it open. The air inside was cooler, tinged with chlorine from the showers and the musty scent of damp towels. The lights buzzed overhead, casting a pale glow over the rows of lockers, gray, dented, stretching into shadow. A bench ran down the middle, empty except for a forgotten sock crumpled at one end. She stepped inside, her sneakers quiet on the tile, and listened. The squeak came again, closer now, from the far end near the showers. Then a shadow moved, quick and low, darting behind the last row of lockers. Cypher froze, her pulse ticking up. "Hello," she called, her voice soft but firm, echoing off the walls. No answer, just the drip-drip of a shower head, steady and slow. She edged forward, her bag bumping against her hip, her eyes scanning the room. The squeak stopped, the silence heavier now. She reached the end of the row, peering around the corner. The showers stretched out, 6 stalls, curtains drawn, water dripping from one. No one, just tile and steam, the air thick with it. She turned back, her breath fogging faintly, and saw her, standing by the lockers, mop in hand, uniform faded and gray. The woman was older, her hair streaked with gray, pulled into a tight bun. She didn't look up, just pushed the mop across the tile, the squeak matching the sound Cypher had heard. "The cleaner." Cypher exhaled, her shoulders easing. "Hey," she said, stepping closer. "Didn't expect anyone this early." The woman didn't respond, didn't glance her way, just kept mopping, her movements slow, deliberate. Cypher watched, the quiet stretching out. The uniform hung loose on her frame, the fabric worn thin, no name tag, no logo. The mop dragged a faint streak of water, but the floor stayed dry, the tile gleaming under the lights. Cypher frowned, something tugging at her, off but not clear. "You work nights?" She tried again, her voice softer. Still nothing, just the squeak, the scrape, the steady rhythm. The woman turned, her back to Cypher now, and moved toward the showers. Cypher stepped back, her bag heavy, and let it go. Cleaners were weird sometimes, headphones, focus, whatever. She grabbed her stuff and headed out, the door creaking shut behind her. The gym was still empty when she left, the neon sign buzzing as she crossed the lot. Her hatchback started with a sputter, the heater kicking on slow. She drove home, the streets dark, her mind on the cleaner, silent, steady, too still. She got in around 4:30 a.m., locked her door, and crashed on her bed, the quiet settling around her. The next night she went back, same time, same routine. She swiped in, signed the clipboard, and started on the elliptical. The gym was hers again, the mirrors reflecting only her, the hum steady. But at 3:50 a.m., the squeak came, same sound, same rhythm, from the locker room. She paused mid-stride and listened. The cleaner was back, earlier than any crew should be. And this time, Cypher wasn't letting it slide. Cypher didn't sleep much after that first encounter. She'd gotten home from the gym, her bed a tangle of sheets by the time she crashed, but rest wouldn't come. The cleaner's silence stuck with her. The way she'd moved, mop dragging across the tile, not a glance, not a word. It wasn't fear that kept her awake, not exactly, just a nagging itch, like a detail she couldn't place. She'd dealt with oddballs before, baristas who stared too long, neighbors who muttered to themselves. But this felt different. Too still, too deliberate. Morning came slow, the sky a dull gray beyond her blinds. She rolled out of bed, her apartment quiet except for the drip of her leaky faucet. She made coffee black, no sugar, and sat at her small table, sketchpad open but untouched. Her mind was back on Juniper Lane, on that locker room, the squeak of the mop echoing in her head. She didn't sketch it, not yet, but she wanted to, the image sharp enough to trace. Instead, she sipped her coffee, the bitterness grounding her, and decided she'd watch closer tonight. She spent the day restless, pacing her apartment, the quiet await she couldn't shake. By evening, she packed her gym bag with purpose, leggings, tank top, sneakers, and her phone fully charged. She didn't bring earbuds this time. Sound was her tool now, not a distraction. The drive to Juniper Lane was familiar, the streets empty, the neon sign glowing against the dark. She pulled into the lot at 2:50 a.m., her hatchback the only car, the asphalt slick with a light drizzle. She swiped in, the beep cutting through the stillness, and signed the clipboard. Cipher, 2:55 a.m. The gym stretched out before her, glass walls reflecting the lights, the air cool and sharp with disinfectant. She headed for the ellipticals, her sneakers quiet on the rubber mats. The machine hummed as she started, her legs moving steady, her eyes on the mirrors. The gym was hers, empty, predictable, until it wasn't. She finished cardio at 3:30 a.m., her breath even, her tank top damp at the neck. The weight room came next, light dumbbells, a few lunges, her routine a comfort. She kept her ears open, no music, just the hum of the air conditioning and the faint clank of steel. By 3:45 a.m., she was stretching, her mat near the mirrors, when it started, the squeak. Slow, deliberate from the locker room. Her head tilted, her stretch pausing mid-motion. Same sound, same rhythm as last night. She stood, her water bottle in hand, and walked toward the door. The squeak grew louder, squeak, scrape, thud, like a pattern she could time. She pushed the door open, the hinges creaking, and stepped inside. The air was colder, the chlorine sharper, the lights buzzing overhead. The lockers loomed gray and silent, the bench empty except for that same forgotten sock. She scanned the room, her pulse steady but quick, and saw her, the cleaner, near the showers, mop in hand. The woman was the same, gray-streaked hair in a bun, faded uniform hanging loose, her movements slow and precise. She didn't look up, didn't pause, just dragged the mop across the tile, the squeak matching her steps. Cipher watched, her breath fogging faintly in the cool air. The floor gleamed under the lights, but the mop left no streak, no water, just a dry swipe, over and over. Cipher's brow furrowed. That wasn't right. "Hey," she said, her voice soft but clear, echoing off the walls. "You're early again." No response, just the squeak, the scrape, the thud. The woman turned slightly, her back to Cipher now, and moved deeper into the shower area. Cipher stepped closer, her sneakers silent, her bag still over her shoulder. "You don't talk much, huh?" she tried, keeping it light. "Nothing, just the rhythm, unbroken, the mop dragging like a metronome." Cipher stopped at the end of the lockers, peering around the corner. The showers stretched out, curtains drawn, one dripping steady. But the cleaner was gone. She blinked, her stomach tightening. The squeak had stopped, the silence sudden and heavy. She walked to the showers, her steps slow, and checked each stall. Empty, just tile and faint steam. The drip-drip of the showerhead filled the quiet, but no cleaner, no mop. Cipher turned, scanning the room, lockers, bench, shadows. Nothing. She hadn't heard the door, hadn't seen her leave. Just gone. Her pulse ticked up, but she didn't run. She walked back to the lockers, her water bottle cold against her palm, and stood there listening. The drip-drip was all she heard, steady and slow. She set her bag down, pulled out her phone, and hit record, audio only, the screen glowing in the dimness. 3:52 a.m., she said, her voice low. Heard her again, mopping, then nothing. "She's not here." She stopped the recording, played it back. Her voice, the drip, a faint squeak, barely there, but real. Proof, small as it was. She pocketed the phone and grabbed her bag, the unease settling in her bones. She left the locker room, the door creaking shut, and headed for the main floor. The gym was still empty, the mirrors reflecting only her, short hair, tense jaw, eyes sharp in the glass. She didn't leave yet. She sat on a bench near the weight room, her bag at her feet, and waited. The clock ticked past 4 a.m., then 4:15. No cleaner, no squeak, just the gym, humming its quiet song. She almost missed it when it started again, faint, distant from the locker room. Squeak, scrape, thud. Her head snapped up, her breath catching. She grabbed her phone, hit record, and walked back, the door creaking as she pushed it open. The cleaner was there, same spot, same mop, same rhythm. Cipher stood in the doorway, watching, recording. The woman didn't look up, just moved, slow and steady, her uniform swaying faintly. Cipher stepped closer, her voice firm. "Hey, I'm talking to you." "Who are you?" No answer, just the squeak, the scrape, the thud. The mop dragged, the floor dry, the air thick with chlorine. Cipher aimed her phone, switching to video, the lens catching the woman's back. 4:20 a.m., she said, narrating. "She's here again, mopping, not responding." The cleaner turned, her face still hidden, and moved toward the showers. Cypher followed, keeping her distance, the camera steady. The woman stopped near the stalls, her mop still, her head tilted slightly. Cypher froze, the lens on her. "Hey," she said again louder. "Look at me." The cleaner didn't move, just stood there, silent, the mop dripping nothing onto the tile. Then she turned, slow and deliberate, and Cypher saw her face, pale, sharp, eyes too dark in the dim light. They locked on her, unblinking, and Cypher's breath hitched. The woman didn't speak, just stared, her gaze heavy, cutting through the space between them. Cypher held the phone, the red light blinking, and stepped back. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice shaking now. The cleaner didn't answer, just turned away, the squeak starting again as she moved into the shadows. Cypher stopped the recording, her hands trembling, and backed out, the door swinging shut behind her. She didn't stay. She grabbed her bag and left, the gym's neon sign buzzing as she crossed the lot. Her hatchback started with a sputter, the heater slow to warm. She drove home, the streets dark, that stare burned into her mind, dark, steady, too knowing. She locked her door, sank onto her bed, and played the video. The squeak, her voice, the cleaner's turn. Those eyes, clear on the screen, staring straight through her. She didn't sleep. The quiet pressed in, the squeak echoing in her head, those eyes watching from the dark. Cypher didn't touch her phone for hours after getting home. It sat on her nightstand, the video unplayed, a weight she couldn't ignore. She'd collapsed onto her bed, the sheets cold against her skin, but sleep stayed out of reach. Those eyes, dark, unblinking, staring through the screen, followed her into the dark. The squeak of the mop, the dry swipe on the tile, the cleaner's silence. It all looped in her head, a rhythm she couldn't shake. She wasn't scared, not exactly. Just unsettled, like she'd brushed against something she wasn't meant to see. Morning came gray and heavy, the rain tapping against her window. She rolled out of bed, her limbs stiff, and made coffee, stronger this time, the bitterness a jolt she needed. Her apartment was quiet. The faucets drip a faint echo of the gym's showerhead. She sat at her table, sketchpad open, and finally sketched it, the cleaner's back, the mop, the shadowed lockers. The lines were sharp, the shading dark, but she didn't draw the face. Not yet. She couldn't get those eyes right, not without looking again. She grabbed her phone, the screen lighting up, 4:47 a.m., the timestamp of the video. She hesitated, her thumb hovering, then hit play. The footage was grainy, the locker room dim, but there it was, the squeak, her voice, the cleaner's turn. Those eyes locked on her, steady and cold, cutting through the lens. She paused it, the frame frozen on that stare, and zoomed in. The face was pale, sharp, the bun tight, but the details blurred. Too dark, too fast. She rewound, played it again. The squeak, the silence, the turn, no words, just that gaze. Her stomach twisted. This wasn't just a quiet worker. The cleaner knew she was there, knew she was recording, and didn't care. Cypher set the phone down, her coffee cooling, and stared at the sketch. She'd gone to the gym for peace, not this. But she wasn't running. She'd never been one to back off. She'd go back tonight, same time, and ask questions. The night crew had to know something. Someone had to schedule that cleaner, clock her in. She spent the day restless, pacing her apartment, the rain a steady drone. By evening, she packed her bag, leggings, tank top, sneakers, phone, and added a small notebook and pen. She wanted notes, not just recordings, something tangible. The drive to Juniper Lane was tense, the streets slick, the neon sign a blur through the wet. She pulled into the lot at 2:50 a.m., her hatchback alone again, the asphalt gleaming under the drizzle. She swiped in, the beep sharp, and signed the clipboard. Cypher, 2:53 a.m. The gym was quiet, the glass walls reflecting the lights, the air cool and sterile. A guy was at the desk this time, broad shoulders, hoodie up, scrolling his phone. She hadn't seen him before, not at this hour. She walked over, her bag over her shoulder, and cleared her throat. "Hey," she said, keeping it casual. "You the night shift?" He glanced up, eyes half-lidded, a faint scar cutting his brow. "Yeah," he said, voice low. "Name's Torin. What's up?" "Just checking," she said, leaning on the counter. "You here every night?" "Most," he shrugged, already back to his phone. "Why?" "The cleaner," she said, watching his face. Older woman, gray hair, mops the locker room around 4 a.m. "You know her?" He paused, his thumb stilling on the screen, then looked up. "Cleaner?" His brow furrowed. but it felt forced. Crew comes at 5, maybe 6. Not 4. She's there, Cypher said firm. 2 nights now, 3:50, 4 a.m. mopping doesn't talk. You've never seen her? Torin leaned back, crossing his arms. Nope. I'm stuck here, don't roam much. If she's in the locker room, I wouldn't know. She didn't buy it, not fully. She's not on the schedule? Not that I've seen, he said too quick. Day guy handles that. Corinne works till 10. Ask him. He tapped his phone, dismissive. Anything else? Yeah, she said, pulling out her notebook. What's her name? He snorted a half laugh. Told you I don't know her. No one's here but me and you. Till morning. She scribbled it down, Torin no cleaner for a.m., and nodded. Thanks. She turned, heading for the ellipticals, his gaze prickling her back. She started her warm-up, the machine humming, her eyes on the mirrors. The gym was empty, the weight room dark, but she kept Torin in her peripheral, hood up, phone glowing. He didn't move, didn't look up, but she felt watched. She finished cardio at 3:35 a.m., her legs warm, her breath steady. The weight room came next, dumbbells, squats, her routine a shield. She kept her ears open, no earbuds, just the gym's hum. At 3:50 a.m., it started, the squeak, faint but clear, from the locker room. She set the kettlebell down, grabbed her phone, and walked to the door, hitting record. The squeak grew louder. Squeak, scrape, thud as she pushed it open. The cleaner was there, same spot, same mop, same rhythm. Gray hair in a bun, uniform faded, dragging the mop across the tile. Cypher stood in the doorway, the camera rolling. Hey, she said, louder this time. I see you every night. Who are you? No answer, just the squeak, the scrape, the thud. The floor stayed dry, the mop leaving no mark. Cypher stepped closer, her voice firm. I'm recording this. Look at me. The cleaner didn't pause, just turned her back to Cypher and moved toward the showers. Cypher followed, the lens steady, narrating low. 3:52 a.m., she's here again, same thing, mopping, no water, no response. The woman stopped near the stalls, her mop still, her head tilted. Cypher held her ground, the camera on her. Hey, she said sharp. I asked you a question. The cleaner turned, slow and deliberate, and those eyes locked on her, dark, unblinking, cutting through the dimness. Cypher's breath caught, but she didn't back off. What's your name? The woman stared, silent, her gaze heavy. Then she turned away, the squeak starting again as she moved into the shadows. Cypher stopped the recording, her hands steady, and left the locker room, the door creaking shut. She walked straight to Torin, her phone hot in her grip. She's in there, she said, stopping at the desk. Right now. Come see. He looked up, frowning. Who? The cleaner, she snapped. Mopping, staring, not talking. You said no one's here. Go look. He sighed, setting his phone down, and stood. Fine. Let's check. He followed her, hoodie low, hands in his pockets. She pushed the door open, the squeak still echoing. Squeak, scrape, thud. The cleaner was near the showers, mop dragging, her back to them. Cypher pointed, the camera off but ready. There. You see her. Torin stepped inside, his boots loud on the tile, and stopped. The squeak paused, the cleaner still, then she turned, those eyes locking on Cypher, ignoring Torin. He squinted, his jaw tightening. Huh, he said low. Didn't know. Cypher's voice rose. She's here every night, same time, same spot. He shrugged, too casual. Not my gig. I don't clean. She's not on my list. He turned, heading out. Talk to Corinne. The door swung shut, the squeak starting again. Cypher stood there, the cleaner's gaze lingering, then fading as she moved into the shadows. Cypher didn't follow, just left, her notebook clenched, the video burning in her pocket. She drove home, the rain heavier, those eyes staring through her mind. Torin knew something, he had to. She'd find Corinne tomorrow, get answers. The cleaner wasn't just a shadow anymore. She was real, and Cypher was on her trail. Cypher didn't sleep after leaving the gym. She got home, her hatchback dripping in the lot, and locked her door with a hard twist. The video sat on her phone, unplayed since Torin's half-hearted shrug, but those eyes, dark, unblinking, locked on her, burned in her mind. She sank onto her bed, the springs creaking, and stared at the ceiling, the rain drumming outside. Torin's words looped in her head. Talk to Corinne. And the cleaner's silence pressed against her chest. She wasn't letting this go. Not now. Morning came wet and gray, the light barely cutting through her blinds. She rolled out of bed, her body heavy, and made coffee black, scalding, a jolt to her frayed nerves. Her sketchpad lay open on the table, the cleaner's back etched in sharp lines, the mop a slash of shadow. She added a note in the margin. Torin, 4 a.m., no help, and grabbed her phone. She played the video again, the squeak filling her quiet apartment, the cleaner's turn freezing on screen. Those eyes stared back, steady and cold, daring her to dig deeper. She didn't sketch the face, not yet. Instead, she pulled out her notebook, flipping to the last page. Torin, no cleaner, 4 a.m. And added more. She's real. Torin saw her. Knows something. She sipped her coffee, the bitterness grounding her, and made a plan. Corinne, the day guy, was her next step. Torin said he worked till 10 p.m. She'd catch him tonight, before her shift. She wasn't waiting for answers to find her. The day dragged, the rain a steady roar outside. She stayed in, pacing her apartment, her sketchpad untouched. By evening, she packed her bag, leggings, tank top, sneakers, phone, notebook, and headed out. The drive to Juniper Lane was tense, the wipers thudding against the wet, the neon sign glowing through the haze. She pulled into the lot at 9:45 p.m., the gym alive with evening noise, cars scattered, lights bright. She swiped in, the beep lost in the hum of voices and clanking weights. The front desk was manned, a guy with short hair and a clipboard, scribbling something as she approached. He looked up, his face young but tired, a name tag pinned crooked. Corinne. She stopped, her bag over her shoulder, and kept it casual. "Hey," she said, nodding. "You Corinne?" "Yeah," he said, setting the pen down. "What's up?" "Cypher," she said, pointing to herself. "I do the 3 a.m. shift. Torin said you handle the schedule. Cleaners, right?" He nodded, leaning back. "Day stuff, yeah. Night's his mess." "What?" "The cleaner," she said, watching his eyes. "Older woman, gray hair, mops the locker room around 4 a.m. Torin says she's not on the list. You know her?" Corinne frowned, his brow creasing. 4 a.m.? No one's scheduled then. Crew comes at 6, 2 guys, day shift prep. "That's it. She's there," Cypher said firm. "Every night I've seen her, 3:50, 4 a.m. mopping, doesn't talk. Torin saw her too last night." He tilted his head, skeptical. "Torin didn't mention it." "You sure?" "Positive," she said, pulling out her phone. "Got video, look." She played it, the squeak filling the space, the cleaner's turn freezing on those eyes. Corinne watched, his frown deepening, then handed it back. "Huh," he said low. "That's weird. No uniform I recognize, no logo, nothing. She's not ours." "Not yours." Cypher's pulse quickened. "Then who is she?" "Beats me," he said, shrugging. "Could be a squatter, someone sneaking in. Gym's 24 hours. People slip through sometimes. Torin should have caught it." "He didn't," she said, sharp. "He acted like it was nothing." Corinne snorted. "Sounds like him. Lazy half the time. Look, I'll check the logs, keycard swipes, sign-ins. If she's not staff, she's using someone's card or tailgating." He grabbed the clipboard, flipping pages. "What's she look like again?" "Gray hair, bun, old uniform, faded, no tags," Cypher said, scribbling it in her notebook. "Sharp face, dark eyes. Stares like she knows you." He nodded, scanning the sheet. "Nothing here. Staffs me, Torin, 2 cleaners at 6 a.m., maintenance at noon. No women, number 4 a.m. He set it down, his eyes narrowing. "You said Torin saw her?" "Yeah," she said. "Came in with me, shrugged it off. Said not his gig." "Typical," Corinne muttered. "I'll talk to him tomorrow, see what he's hiding." "You got more videos?" "2," she said. "Last night and the one before." "Keep 'em," he said. "Might need to show the manager or security if she's a trespasser." He paused, then added, "Be careful, yeah? She's weirding you out for a reason." She nodded, pocketing her phone. "Thanks. Let me know what you find." He waved her off, already back to his clipboard. She headed for the ellipticals, her mind racing. Not staff, not scheduled. A squatter, maybe, but that stare, that rhythm, it didn't fit. She started her warm-up, the machine humming, her eyes on the mirrors. The gym was quieter now, the evening crowd thinning, but she felt exposed, the glass walls too open. She finished cardio at 3:35 a.m., her legs steady, her breath even. The weight room followed, dumbbells, lunges, her routine a lifeline. She kept her phone close, no earbuds, just the gym's hum. At 3:50 a.m., the squeak started, squeak, scrape, thud, from the locker room. She grabbed her bag, hit record, and walked to the door, the hinges creaking as she pushed it open. The cleaner was there, same spot, same mop, same rhythm. Gray hair in a bun, uniform swaying, dragging the mop across the tile. Cypher stood in the doorway, the camera rolling. "Hey," she said loud and clear. "You're not supposed to be here. Who are you?" No answer, just the squeak, the scrape, the thud. The floor stayed dry, the mop leaving no mark. Cypher stepped closer, her voice sharp. "I've got you on video, 3 nights now. Look at me." The cleaner didn't pause, just turned her back to Cypher and moved toward the showers. Cypher followed, the lens steady, narrating low. 3:52 a.m., she's here again, no water, no response. The woman stopped near the stalls, her mop still, her head tilted. Cypher held her ground, the camera on her. "Hey," she said sharper. "I know you're not staff. Talk." The cleaner turned, slow and deliberate, and those eyes locked on her, dark, unblinking, heavy with something Cypher couldn't name. Her breath caught, but she didn't flinch. "What's your name?" The woman stared, silent, her gaze a wall. Then she turned away, the squeak starting again as she moved into the shadows. Cypher stopped the recording, her hands steady, and backed out, the door creaking shut. She didn't go to Torin, not tonight. He'd dodge again, and she had enough. She left the gym, the rain heavier now, soaking her hood as she crossed the lot. Her hatchback started with a sputter, the heater slow. She drove home, the streets dark, Corinne's words echoing. Squatter, trespasser. It didn't add up, not with that stare, that rhythm. She locked her door, sank onto her bed, and played the video. The squeak, her voice, those eyes, clearer now, sharper, staring through her. She sketched them this time, the lines quick and dark, the page trembling under her pen. Sleep didn't come. The rain pressed in, the cleaner's gaze lingered, and Cypher knew she'd find Corinne again, push harder. This wasn't over. Cypher couldn't unsee those eyes. She'd sketched them, dark, sharp, staring from the page, but it didn't help. They followed her into the night, cutting through the quiet of her apartment as the rain hammered outside. She'd lain in bed, her phone beside her, the latest video unplayed but heavy in her mind. Corinne's words, squatter, trespasser, clashed with the cleaner's rhythm, her silence, that gaze. It wasn't random. It was deliberate, aimed at her, and she was done waiting for someone else to explain it. Morning came wet and cold, the light barely piercing the storm clouds. She dragged herself up, her body aching from tension, and made coffee, black, bitter, a lifeline. Her sketchpad sat open, the cleaner's eyes glaring from the paper, her notebook beside it. Corinne, no cleaner on schedule, check logs. She sipped her coffee, the heat searing her throat, and replayed the video. The squeak, her voice, that turn, those eyes locking on her, unblinking, knowing. She paused it, the frame frozen, and stared back. She wasn't backing off. She spent the day restless, the rain a steady roar. Her apartment felt smaller, the walls closing in as she paced, her mind on Juniper Lane. Corinne had promised to check the logs, keycard swipes, sign-ins, but she didn't trust him to follow through, not fully. Torin's dodge, Corinne's shrug, they were hiding something or they didn't care. She'd go early again, catch Corinne before her shift, see the logs herself. She packed her bag, leggings, tank top, sneakers, phone, notebook, and added a flashlight, small but bright for the locker room shadows. The drive was tense, the wipers thudding against the wet, the neon sign a smear through the rain. She pulled into the lot at 9:40 p.m., the gym alive with evening stragglers, cars scattered, lights blazing. She swiped in, the beep swallowed by the noise of weights and chatter. Corinne was at the desk, clipboard in hand, talking to a guy in a hoodie. She waited, her bag over her shoulder, until the guy left, then stepped up. "Hey," she said firm. "Cypher, you checked those logs?" Corinne looked up, his eyes tired but sharp. "Yeah," he said, setting the clipboard down. Looked at swipes, sign-ins, nothing weird. Just staff and members. Nothing. She leaned on the counter, her voice low. "She's there every night, 4 a.m. No card, no sign-in?" "Nope," he said, flipping the clipboard toward her. "Here, past week. Me, Torin, cleaners at 6 a.m. You regulars. No one else swiping in at 4. She scanned it, names times keycard IDs. Her own Cypher, 2:53 a.m., 2:55 a.m. Stood out, but no unknowns, number 4 a.m. entries. "She's not tailgating," she said, frowning. "I'm alone when she shows up, no one to follow." "Then she's got a card," Corinne said, shrugging. "Old member, maybe, someone who didn't cancel. Happens sometimes. And the uniform? She pressed. Faded, no logo, not yours, you said. Could be anything, he said, too casual. Thrift store find, old staff gear. Look, I'll tell the manager tomorrow, see if security can sweep. That's all I've got. She didn't buy it. Not the ease, not the shrug. Torin saw her, she said. He's not telling you? He's off tonight, Corinne said. Texted me, said he's sick. I'll ask when he's back. She nodded, scribbling it down. Torin off, Corinne no help, and pocketed her notebook. Thanks, she said, dry, and headed for the ellipticals. The gym was thinning out, the mirrors reflecting fewer faces, but she felt exposed, the glass walls too bright. She started her warm-up, the machine humming, her eyes darting to the locker room door. She finished cardio at 3:35 a.m., her legs steady, her breath even. The weight room followed, dumbbells, squats, her routine a shield. She kept her phone close, flashlight in her pocket, no earbuds, just the gym's hum. At 3:50 a.m., the squeak started, squeak, scrape, thud from the locker room. She grabbed her bag, hit record, and walked to the door, the hinges creaking as she pushed it open. The cleaner was there, same spot, same mop, same rhythm. Gray hair in a bun, uniform swaying, dragging the mop across the tile. Cypher stood in the doorway, the camera rolling. Hey, she said loud and clear. You're not on the logs, no card, no sign-in. Who are you? No answer, just the squeak, the scrape, the thud. The floor stayed dry, the mop leaving no mark. Cypher stepped closer, her voice sharp. I've got you on video 4 nights now. Look at me. The cleaner didn't pause, just turned her back to Cypher and moved toward the showers. Cypher followed, the lens steady, narrating low. 3:52 a.m., she's here again, no water, no response, not staff. The woman stopped near the stalls, her mop still, her head tilted. Cypher held her ground, the camera on her. Hey, she said sharper. I know you're not supposed to be here. Talk. The cleaner turned, slow and deliberate, and those eyes locked on her, dark, unblinking, heavy with intent. Cypher's breath caught, but she didn't flinch. What's your name? The woman stared, silent, her gaze a pressure. Then she turned away, the squeak starting again as she moved into the shadows. Cypher stopped the recording, her hands steady, and pulled out her flashlight. She swept the beam, lockers, bench, showers, empty now, the squeak gone. She stood there, the drip-drip of the shower head filling the quiet, and checked the video. Her voice, the squeak, those eyes, clear, staring, no words. She didn't leave yet. Corinne's logs were clean, but something was off. She walked back to the desk, empty now, Corinne gone, his shift over. The clipboard sat there, unattended. She glanced around, no one, and flipped through it, her flashlight low. Pages of names, times, IDs. Nothing at 4 a.m., just like he'd said. But then a smudge, faint, on the edge of last week's sheet. She tilted it, the light catching ink. Cleaner, 4 a.m., no ID. Erased, rewritten over, but there. Her pulse quickened. Someone had logged her, then scrubbed it. She snapped a photo, the flash too bright, and flipped back, more smudges, older sheets, same spot. Not every night, but enough. She scribbled it in her notebook. Logs erased, 4 a.m., cleaner, and pocketed her phone. Torin, Corinne, someone was covering or ignoring. She headed for the locker room again, flashlight on, determined. The squeak was back, squeak, scrape, thud, fainter now, near the showers. She pushed the door open, the beam cutting through the dimness. The cleaner stood there, mop still, staring at the bench where Cypher stretched every night. Not mopping, just watching, her head tilted, those eyes fixed on the empty spot. Cypher froze, the camera off but ready. Hey, she said low. That's my spot. The cleaner didn't turn, just stared, silent, the mop dripping nothing. Cypher stepped closer, the beam steady. You're not cleaning, you're waiting. For me. The woman's head shifted, slow, those eyes locking on her again, dark, unblinking, knowing. Cypher's stomach twisted, but she held her ground. Who are you? No answer, just the stare, heavy and cold. Then the cleaner turned, the squeak starting as she moved into the shadows. Cypher didn't follow, just watched, the beam trembling slightly. She left the locker room, the door creaking shut, and headed out, the gym quiet now, the neon sign buzzing. She drove home, the rain a steady roar, the erased logs and that stare burning in her mind. Someone knew, someone was letting this happen. She locked her door, sank onto her bed, and sketched it. The cleaner at the bench, eyes dark, waiting. Sleep didn't come. The squeak echoed, the truth closer but still out of reach. Cypher couldn't let it rest. The cleaner's stare, dark, unblinking, fixed on her bench, had followed her home, sinking into her bones like the rain soaking her apartment's walls. She'd sketched it, the lines sharp and jagged, but the drawing didn't quiet her mind. The erased logs, the cleaner's silence, Torin's shrugs, Corinne's half-answers, they all pointed to something hidden, something she was meant to find. She wasn't scared anymore, just tired and stubborn. She'd end this tonight, one way or another. Morning came gray and damp, the rain a soft hum outside. She dragged herself up, her body heavy, and made coffee, black, scalding, a jolt to her frayed edges. Her sketchpad lay open, the cleaner's eyes glaring from the page, her notebook beside it. Logs erased, 4 a.m., cleaner waiting. She sipped her coffee, the heat steadying her, and played the latest video. The squeak, her voice, that stare, clear, deliberate, aimed at her. She paused it, the frame frozen, and traced the screen with her finger. She'd get answers, real ones. She spent the day planning, the rain a steady backdrop. She packed her bag, leggings, tank top, sneakers, phone, notebook, flashlight, and added a voice recorder, small and old, from a drawer. Video wasn't enough. She needed sound, clean and clear. She'd go early, catch Corinne again, then stay for the cleaner. The drive to Juniper Lane was tense, the wipers slow against the drizzle, the neon sign glowing through the wet. She pulled in at 9:50 p.m., the lot quiet now, just a few cars scattered under the lights. She swiped in, the beep sharp, and found Corinne at the desk, clipboard in hand. He looked up, his brow creasing. "Back again," he said, dry. "What now?" "The logs," Cypher said firm, dropping her bag. "You saw the erasures, 4 a.m., cleaner, scrubbed out. Who's hiding her?" He sighed, setting the clipboard down. "Told you, I'll tell the manager tomorrow. No one's hiding anything, probably Torin screwing up." "Torin saw her," she said sharp. "He's dodging. You're dodging. She's not staff, not a squatter. She's too consistent. I've got 4 videos, Corinne. She's waiting for me." He frowned, leaning back. "Waiting?" "Yeah," she said, pulling out her phone. "Last night, stood at my bench, staring, not mopping. Look." She played it, the squeak filling the space, the cleaner's eyes locking on the lens. Corinne watched, his jaw tightening, then handed it back. "That's off," he said low. "Okay, I'll dig deeper, old logs, staff records. But I'm out at 10. Torin's back tonight, ask him." "He'll lie," she said, pocketing her phone. "But fine. Call me if you find something." She scribbled her number, tore the page, and slid it over. He nodded, tucking it away, and she headed for the ellipticals, her routine a cover now. She finished cardio at 3:35 a.m., her legs steady, her breath even. The weight room followed, dumbbells, lunges, her focus split. Torin was at the desk when she passed, hoodie up, phone glowing. She didn't stop, just nodded, her eyes on the locker room door. At 3:50 a.m., the squeak started, squeak, scrape, thud. She grabbed her bag, hit record on her phone and the voice recorder, and walked in, flashlight on. The cleaner was there, same spot, same mop, same rhythm. Gray hair in a bun, uniform swaying, dragging the mop across the tile. Cypher stood in the doorway, both devices rolling. "Hey," she said loud and clear. "I know you're not staff, no card, no log. You're here for me, why?" No answer, just the squeak, the scrape, the thud. The floor stayed dry, the mop leaving no mark. Cypher stepped closer, her voice sharp. "I've got you on tape, 5 nights. Look at me." The cleaner turned, her back to Cypher, and moved toward the showers. Cypher followed, flashlight steady, narrating low. 3:52 a.m., she's here, same routine, no response. The woman stopped near the stalls, her mop still, her head tilted. Cypher aimed the beam, the camera on her. "Hey," she said sharper. "You're done hiding. Talk." The cleaner turned, slow and deliberate, and those eyes locked on her, dark, unblinking, heavy with recognition. Cypher's breath caught, but she held her ground. "Who are you?" The woman stared, silent, her gaze await. Then, a sound faint and rough, like a cough held back. "Mira," she said, her voice low, cracked, barely there. Cypher froze, the name hitting her like a stone. The cleaner, Mira, didn't move, just stared, her mop still. "Mira," Cypher repeated, her voice steadying. "Why are you here? Why me?" Myra's eyes didn't waver. "Habit," she said, the word a rasp, fading into the drip-drip of the shower head. She turned away, the squeak starting again, slower now, as she moved into the shadows. Cypher stopped the recordings, her hands trembling, and followed, flashlight up. "Wait," she called. "What habit? Tell me." The cleaner didn't stop, just faded into the shower stalls, the squeak dying out. Cypher swept the beam, empty, just tile and steam. She stood there, Myra's voice echoing in her head. Habit. She left the locker room, the door creaking shut, and walked to Torin, her recordings hot in her grip. "Torin," she said, stopping at the desk. "Her name's Mira." She spoke, said Habit. "You know her?" He looked up, his phone dimming, his scar catching the light. "Mira?" He frowned, then sighed. "Shit. Yeah, old cleaner years back. Worked nights, quit when I started. Weird lady, quiet, stuck to herself. Quit." Cypher's stomach twisted. "She's here every night, 4 a.m., my bench." He leaned back, rubbing his face. "Not on payroll, not since I've been here. Must have kept her card, comes in quiet. Didn't think she'd stick around." "She's not cleaning," Cypher said, sharp. "She's watching me." "Why?" "Dunno," he said, too casual. "Habit, like she said. Jim's her haunt, maybe you're just there." "And you let her?" she snapped. "Erased her from the logs?" "Not me," he said, hands up. "Corinne's mess, or the old manager's. I don't care who sneaks in, long as they don't break shit." She glared, pocketing her devices. "Tell Corinne. Get her card canceled, she's done." She left, the rain light now, the neon sign buzzing as she crossed the lot. Her hatchback started slow, the heater weak. She drove home, Myra's voice, Habit, ringing in her ears, the recordings burning in her bag. She locked her door, sank onto her bed, and played them back. The squeak, her voice, Myra's rasp, Habit. She uploaded them to her laptop, digging online gym records, old staff lists. A grainy photo popped up, Juniper Lane, 2018. Miravel, night cleaner, retired. Pale face, gray hair, sharp eyes. Cypher stared, the sketch matching the screen. Retired, not fired, not gone. Just stuck, coming back, night after night, her routine a ghost of itself. Cypher didn't go back for a week. Corinne called. "Cards cut, she's out." But she stayed away, the gym's quiet tainted now. When she returned, the locker room was silent. No squeak, no stare. Torin nodded, said nothing. She stretched at her bench, the mirrors reflecting only her, the hum steady. Mira was gone, her habit broken, or waiting somewhere else. The rain faded, the nights quieted, but Cypher kept the recordings, the sketches, just in case. Lyrian had always been an early bird. The world felt cleaner before dawn, quiet, untouched, hers alone. She'd found her rhythm in those hours, when the city still slept and the streets lay empty under a fading sky. That's why she picked the 5 a.m. slot at the gym on Calder Road, a small, no-frills place squeezed between a laundromat and a pawn shop. It wasn't much, creaky floors, rusted weights, a faint smell of rubber mats. But it was open 24 hours, and the early shift gave her what she craved: solitude, space, control. She'd started going there a year ago, after moving to the city for a new job, data entry, remote, soul-crushing in its monotony. The gym was her escape, a way to shake off the screen's glare and the endless spreadsheets. She'd pack her bag the night before, leggings, a loose tank top, her worn sneakers, a water bottle, and her keycard tucked in a side pocket. The drive was quick, 5 minutes through dim streets, the lot a patchwork of cracked asphalt lit by a flickering sodium lamp. She'd pull in just before 5 a.m., her hatchback the only car, the gym's sign. Calder Fitness, buzzing faintly in the dark. She'd swipe her keycard, the beep sharp against the quiet, and step inside. The air was cool, tinged with sweat and metal, the lights harsh but steady, reflecting off the mirrors that lined every wall. The front desk was empty at that hour. No staff, just a clipboard with a sign-in sheet she rarely bothered with. She'd head straight for the cardio room, a small corner with a few bikes and a treadmill, and start her warm-up. She preferred the bike, low impact, steady, no jolts to wake her too fast. She'd pedal for 15 minutes, her legs moving in a smooth rhythm, her breath syncing with the hum of the chain. The mirrors showed her, long hair tied back, tank top shifting with each push. But the gym beyond was still, empty, just how she liked it. After cardio, she'd move to the weight room, a cramped space with racks of barbells, a few benches, and a squat rack that wobbled if you pushed it too hard. That Tuesday was no different, at first. She pulled into the lot at 4:58 a.m., the sky a deep bruise, no stars. Her headlights swept over the asphalt. Empty, quiet, the laundromat's neon open sign flickering next door. She grabbed her bag, locked her hatchback, and swiped in. The gym was silent, the lights buzzing overhead, the air cool against her skin. She signed in, Lyrian 5 a.m., and headed for the bike. She pedaled for 15 minutes, her legs warming, her breath steady. The mirrors reflected the gym's sprawl, cardio machines, weight racks, the glass door smudged with fingerprints. She finished, wiped the sweat from her neck, and moved to the weight room. She grabbed a barbell from the rack, 45 pounds, light to start, and set up for squats. The steel was cold, the knurling rough against her palms. She counted silently, 1, 2, 3, her eyes on the mirror ahead, checking her form. Mid-set, she saw it, a shadow in the corner of the weight room, tall, still, too sharp to be hers. It lingered behind her reflection, just beyond the squat rack, where the light didn't quite reach. She paused, the bar resting on her shoulders, and squinted. The mirror showed the racks, the benches, the dim edge of the room, but the shadow stayed, unmoving, a silhouette with no source. Her pulse ticked up, a faint thud in her ears. She lowered the bar, the clang loud in the quiet, and turned her head. The corner was empty, just rubber mats and a rusted dumbbell rack. No one, nothing. She frowned, brushing it off, tired eyes, early morning haze, the mirrors playing tricks. She'd been up since 4, staring at shadows before the sun. She shook her head, re-racked the bar, and moved to the bench press, 65 pounds, light reps, her routine unbroken. The shadow didn't reappear, not then. She finished her sets, her chest tight from the lift, and stretched on a mat near the mirrors. The gym stayed silent, the hum of the heater kicking on the only sound. By 6 a.m., she was done, her muscles warm, her breath even. She grabbed her bag and headed out, the sky lightening now, a thin gray creeping over the lot. Her hatchback started with a sputter, the heater slow to warm, and she drove home, the shadow a faint nag in her mind. Her apartment was a small one-bedroom, all beige walls and thrift store finds. She showered, the hot water rinsing off the sweat and the weirdness, and settled at her desk with coffee, black, no sugar. The day blurred into data entry, numbers and rows, the gym a distant hum. She didn't think much of it, not yet. Shadows happened, especially at dawn, when the light was thin and the mind was soft. The next morning she went back, same time, same routine. She pulled into the lot at 4:59 a.m., the sky dark, the laundromat's sign flickering. She swiped in, signed the sheet, Lyrian 5 a.m., and started on the bike. The gym was hers, the mirrors reflecting only her, the hum steady. She finished cardio, moved to the weight room, and loaded the barbell, 50 pounds this time, a slow warm-up. She started her squats, counting silently, 1, 2, 3, her eyes on the mirror. The shadow was back, same corner, same shape, tall and still. It hovered behind her, sharper now, the edges crisp against the dimness. She froze mid-squat, the bar heavy on her shoulders, and stared. It didn't move, didn't shift, just stood there, a silhouette with no face, no sound. Her breath caught, but she didn't drop the bar, just lowered it, slow and deliberate, the clang echoing too loud. She turned, her sneakers squeaking on the mats, and checked the corner. Empty, just the rack and the wall. No one, nothing. Her pulse raced, but she didn't run. She walked the room, her eyes darting, mirrors, benches, racks. The lights buzzed steady, no flickers, no tricks. She stood there, hands on her hips, the quiet pressing in. Okay, she muttered, her voice small but firm. Fine. She didn't finish her workout, not fully. She did a few more reps, lighter, her eyes on the mirror, but the shadow didn't return. By 6 a.m., she was out, the sky a pale gray, the lot still empty. She drove home, the heater humming, the shadow sticking to her thoughts. It wasn't her, too tall, too still. It wasn't a reflection, nothing matched. She locked her door, showered, and sat with her coffee, the unease settling in. The next morning, she went back anyway, routine was routine. She swiped in at 5 a.m., the gym silent, her bag heavy with intent. She'd watch closer this time, figure it out. The bike hummed under her, the weight room waited, and she braced herself, shadow or not, she wasn't letting it win. Lyrian couldn't shake the shadow. It had lingered in her mind all day, A dark smudge against the spreadsheets she stared at, the coffee she drank, the quiet of her apartment. She'd told herself it was nothing, early mornings, dim lights, a tired brain weaving tricks, but it didn't stick. The silhouette had been too clear, too still, too tall to be hers. She wasn't one to jump at ghosts or shadows, but twice in 2 days wasn't coincidence. It was something, and she needed to know what. She barely slept that night, her bed a tangle of sheets, the rain tapping against her window like a restless finger. Morning came slow, the sky a deep gray, and she dragged herself up, her body heavy but her resolve sharp. She made coffee, black bitter, a kick to her fog, and sat at her desk, her gym bag packed and waiting. She'd go back, same time, same routine, but this time she'd watch. She wasn't running from this, not when the gym was her space, her control. She added a small flashlight to her bag, not the gym's harsh bulbs, but something she could aim, and her phone fully charged. She'd record it if it happened again, catch the shadow on video, prove it wasn't her imagination. The drive to Calder Road was tense, the streets empty, the laundromat's neon sign flickering like a dying pulse. She pulled into the lot at 4:58 a.m., her hatchback alone, the asphalt slick with drizzle. She swiped in, the beep cutting through the quiet, and signed the sheet, Lyrian, 5 a.m. The gym was silent, the lights buzzing overhead, the air cool and stale with rubber and sweat. She headed for the bike, her sneakers soft on the mats, and started her warm-up. Her legs pumped steady, her breath sinking with the hum, her eyes on the mirrors. The weight room stretched out behind her reflection, racks, benches, that dim corner where the shadow had stood. She finished cardio at 5:15 a.m., her muscles warm, her pulse even. She grabbed her bag, flashlight in her pocket, and moved to the weight room. She loaded the barbell, 50 pounds, light enough to manage, and set up for squats. The steel was cold, the knurling rough against her palms. She counted silently, 1, 2, 3, her eyes fixed on the mirror, watching her form, watching the corner. It came at the 5th rep. The shadow, tall, still, sharp, hovered behind her just beyond the squat rack. Her breath caught, but she didn't stop, just kept going, counting louder in her head, 6, 7, 8. It didn't move, didn't shift, just stood there, a silhouette against the dimness, edges crisp in the mirror's glare. She lowered the bar, the clang loud in the quiet, and turned her head slow, deliberate. The corner was empty, just mats, the rack, a faint scuff on the wall. Her pulse thudded, but she didn't flinch. She grabbed her flashlight, clicked it on, and swept the beam, racks, benches, mirrors. The light cut through the shadows, steady and bright, but found nothing. No one, no shape. She walked the room, her sneakers squeaking, her eyes darting. The mirrors reflected her, long hair tied back, tank top shifting. But the corner stayed bare, the gym silent except for the hum. She didn't buy it, not this time. Twice was a pattern, 3 was proof. She pulled out her phone, hit record, and propped it on a bench, aiming it at the mirror. 5:20 a.m., she said, her voice low but firm. Saw it again, shadow in the corner, same spot. She grabbed the barbell, started another set, 1, 2, 3, watching the screen. The shadow flickered back, tall and still, mid-rep. She kept going, for 5, 6, her eyes locked on it, her breath tight. She finished, re-racked the bar, and turned, empty again, the corner dark. She stopped the recording, played it back, her voice, the clang, the shadow clear in the mirror, then gone when she turned. Her stomach twisted. It was real, on video, not just her eyes. She saved it, her hands steady, and moved to the bench press, 65 pounds, light reps, her focus split. The shadow didn't return. Not yet, but she felt it, a weight in the air, pressing against her back. She finished her workout at 6 a.m., her muscles aching, her mind racing. She stretched on the mat, flashlight beside her, eyes on the mirror. The gym stayed silent, the light steady, no flickers. She grabbed her bag and left, the sky a pale gray now, the lot still empty. Her hatchback started slow, the heater humming, and she drove home, the video burning in her pocket. She locked her door, showered, and sat with her coffee, the shadow replaying in her head, tall, still, too real. She uploaded the video to her laptop, watching it again. The shadow stood clear, shoulders broad, legs straight, no face, no motion, then vanished when she turned. She paused it, zoomed in, the edges sharp, no blur, no trick of the light. It wasn't her reflection, too tall, too static. She didn't know what it was, but it wasn't nothing. She'd go back tomorrow, record more, figure it out. The next morning she did, same time, same routine. She pulled into the lot at 4:59 a.m., the drizzle heavier now, the laundromat's sign a faint glow. She swiped in, signed the sheet, Lyrian 5 a.m., and started on the bike. The gym was hers, the mirrors reflecting only her, the hum steady. She finished cardio, moved to the weight room, and set up her phone, tripod this time, borrowed from a drawer, aimed at the mirror. She loaded the barbell, 55 pounds, and started her squats, counting silently, 1, 2, 3. The shadow came at the fourth rep, same corner, same shape, tall and still. She didn't pause, just kept going, 4, 5, 6, her eyes on the screen, the tripod steady. It didn't move, didn't shift, just stood there, a silhouette in the glass. She finished, re-racked the bar and turned, empty, the corner bare. She swept the flashlight, racks, benches, nothing. The video rolled, catching it all. Her reps, the shadow, the turn. She stopped it, played it back. Her breathing, the clang, the shadow clear, then gone. She saved it, her pulse quick but steady, and moved to the bench press. Mid-set, she saw it again, flickering in the mirror, closer now, just behind the rack. Her chest tightened, but she finished 5 reps, slow and controlled, watching it. She sat up, turned, empty again, the room silent. She didn't stretch, not this time. She grabbed her bag, her recordings, and headed out, the sky lightening, the drizzle cold against her skin. Her hatchback started with a sputter, the heater slow, and she drove home, the shadow's persistence gnawing at her. She locked her door, sank onto her couch, and watched the videos. 2 now, same shape, same spot, vanishing every time. It wasn't her. It wasn't the gym, light steady, mirrors clean. It was something, someone watching her, stepping into her routine. She didn't sleep much that day, the rain a steady hum, her coffee cooling untouched. She'd go back, same time, same place, but tomorrow she'd push harder. Record more, check the gym, find it. The shadow wasn't winning, not yet. Lyrian couldn't let the shadow rest. It had rooted itself in her mind, a dark shape that followed her through the day. Past her laptop's glow, her coffee's steam, the quiet hum of her apartment. She'd watched the videos, 2 now, the shadow clear and still, vanishing every time she turned. And it wasn't her imagination. It was too tall, too steady, too real to dismiss as a trick of the light. She wasn't one to scare easy, but she wasn't blind either. Something was in that gym, and she needed to know what. She barely slept, her bed a mess of sheets, the rain a steady drum against her window. Morning came gray and heavy, the drizzle thickening into a downpour. She dragged herself up, her body stiff, and made coffee, black, sharp, a jolt to her frayed edges. Her laptop sat open, the videos paused on that silhouette, shoulders broad, legs straight, no face. She'd gone back twice, recorded it twice, and it kept showing up, same corner, same stillness. She wasn't running, she'd built this routine too hard, but she wasn't waiting anymore. She packed her bag with purpose, leggings, tank top, sneakers, phone, tripod, flashlight, and added a small notebook and pen. She'd document it, not just on video, times, details, anything she missed. The drive to Calder Road was tense, the wipers thudding against the wet, the laundromat's neon sign a faint blur. She pulled into the lot at 4:58 a.m., her hatchback alone, the asphalt gleaming under the rain. She swiped in, the beep sharp, and signed the sheet, Lyrian 5 a.m. The gym was silent, the lights buzzing, the air cool with rubber and rust. She headed for the bike, her sneakers quiet, and started her warm-up. Her legs pumped steady, her breath sinking with the hum, her eyes on the mirrors. The weight room stretched out behind her, racks, benches, that dim corner where the shadow lived. She finished cardio at 5:15 a.m., her muscles warm, her pulse even, and grabbed her bag. She set up in the weight room, tripod on a bench, phone recording, aimed at the mirror. She loaded the barbell, 55 pounds, and started her squats, counting silently, 1, 2, 3. The shadow came at the fourth rep, tall, still, sharp in the corner. She didn't stop, just kept going, 4, 5, 6, her eyes on the screen, the tripod steady. It didn't move, didn't shift, just stood there, a silhouette against the dimness. She finished, re-racked the bar, and turned, empty, the corner bare. She swept the flashlight, racks, benches, mirrors, nothing. The video rolled, catching it all. She stopped it, played it back, her breathing, the clang, the shadow clear, then gone. She saved it, her pulse quick, and scribbled in her notebook. 5:20 a.m., shadow in corner, same spot, vanishes on turn. She wasn't leaving it there, not this time. She walked to the corner, flashlight on, and checked it closer, Matt's rack wall. The scuff she'd seen before was still there, faint but real, a mark in the paint. She crouched, the beam steady, and ran her fingers over it, rough, chipped, not new. It wasn't random, too straight, too deliberate, like something had scraped it over and over. She swept the light lower along the matte, dust, a few hairs, then something else, a thin scratch barely visible cutting into the rubber. Her stomach tightened. She followed it, short, jagged, leading to the rack. She checked the metal, dense, rust, and there, near the base, another mark, a gouge in the steel. Her breath caught. This wasn't a trick. This was physical, something touching the gym, night after night. She snapped photos, phone steady, flash bright, the scuff, the scratch, the gouge. She stood, her flashlight sweeping the room, and moved to the mirrors. They were clean, no smudges, reflecting her, long hair, tense jaw, but the angle was wrong. The shadow should have matched something, the rack, a light. It didn't. She grabbed her notebook, wrote it down. Marks. Wall scuff, matte scratch, rack gouge, 5:25 a.m. And set the tripod again. She loaded the bench press, 70 pounds, light reps, and slid under the bar. She counted 1, 2, 3, watching the mirror. The shadow flickered back, closer now, just behind the rack. Her chest tightened, but she finished 4, 5, her eyes on it, steady and still. She sat up, turned. Empty, the corner dark. The video caught it, closer, sharper, gone. She stopped it, saved it, and walked the room again, flashlight up. She checked the rack. More scratches, faint but there, clustering near the base. She ran her hand over them, cold, rough, old. Her pulse raced, but she didn't stop, just scribbled it. More scratches, rack base, 5:35 a.m. She wasn't imagining this. The gym held proof, etched in steel and rubber. She didn't stretch, not yet. She moved to the cardio room, set the tripod by the bike, and pedaled slow, recording the weight room's reflection. The shadow didn't show, not there, but she felt it, a pressure in the air. She finished at 6 a.m., the sky a pale gray, and checked the corner one last time. Marks unchanged, no new clues. She grabbed her bag and left, the rain heavier now, soaking her hood as she crossed the lot. Her hatchback started slow, the heater humming, and she drove home, the photos and videos burning in her pocket. She locked her door, sank onto her couch, and uploaded them. 3 videos now, the shadow consistent, the marks clear in the flash. She zoomed in, the scuff, the scratches, the gouge, old, worn, like something had stood there night after night, scraping the gym raw. She didn't sleep much that day, the rain a steady roar, her coffee cooling untouched. She Googled Calder Fitness, nothing useful, just a bare website and old reviews. Cheap, quiet, sketchy vibe. No history, no staff list. She'd go back tomorrow, same time, same place, but with more. She'd check the desk, the logs, anything. The shadow wasn't just watching. It was leaving traces, and she'd find them. The next morning, she did 4:59 a.m., the lot empty, the drizzle cold. She swiped in, signed the sheet, Lyrian, 5 a.m., and started on the bike, tripod set, recording. The gym was silent, the mirrors reflecting her, the weight room waiting. She finished cardio, moved to the barbell, and set up 60 pounds, squats, counting 1, 2, 3. The shadow came, same corner, same stillness, taller, sharper, mid-rep. She kept going, 4, 5, 6, her eyes on the screen, the tripod steady. She finished, turned, empty again, and checked the corner. The marks were there, scuff, scratches, gouge, but something new, a faint smear, dark and thin, near the rack space. She crouched, flashlight on. It wasn't dust, not dirt, too slick, too red. Rust, maybe, or... She snapped a photo, her hand steady, and wiped it with her finger, dry, flaky, old. She wrote it. Smear, red, rack base, 5:25 a.m., and stood, her stomach twisting. She didn't stop, just moved to the desk, the clipboard unattended. She flipped through names, times, hers consistent, Lyrian, 5 a.m., every day. No one else this early, not for weeks. She checked older sheets, faded ink, smudged names, but nothing at 5. The shadow wasn't signed in, not human, not logged. She left the gym, the rain heavy, the videos and marks a weight she carried home. She locked her door, sank onto her bed, and stared at the photos, the smear, the scratches, the shadow staring back. It wasn't just there, it was leaving pieces, marking her space. She'd end it tomorrow, one way or another. Lyrian couldn't unsee the smear. That thin red streak, dry flaky, etched near the rack, had lodged itself in her mind, a splinter she couldn't pull out. She'd stared at the photos all day, the shadow's silhouette overlapping with the scratches, the gouge, that mark. It wasn't rust, not fully, not with that color, and it wasn't her. The gym was leaving clues, or something in it was, and she was done guessing. She'd find the source, confront it, make it stop. Sleep didn't come that night, the rain a relentless roar against her window, her bed a tangle of unrest. Morning came wet and gray, the light barely cutting through the storm. She dragged herself up, her body heavy, and made coffee, black, scalding, a jolt to her frayed nerves. Her laptop glowed, the videos paused on the shadow, tall, still watching, while her notebook sat open. Smear, red, rack base, 5:25 a.m. She'd gone back 3 times, recorded it, found marks. It wasn't random, it was tied to her routine, her space. She packed her bag with intent: leggings, tank top, sneakers, phone, tripod, flashlight, notebook, and added her recordings, backed up on a USB drive. She'd show someone, force answers. The logs were clean, but the gym wasn't. Someone had to know. She drove to Calder Road at 4:58 a.m., the wipers thudding, the laundromat's sign a faint pulse. The lot was empty, her hatchback alone, the rain streaking the asphalt. She swiped in, the beep sharp, and signed the sheet, Lyrian, 5 a.m. The gym was silent, the lights buzzing, the air cool with rubber and rust. A guy was at the desk this time, lean, hoodie up, scrolling his phone. She hadn't seen him before, not at this hour. She started on the bike, tripod set, recording, her legs pumping steady, her eyes on the mirrors. The weight room waited, dim and still, the corner a shadow of itself. She finished cardio at 5:15 a.m., her muscles warm, her breath even. She grabbed her bag and headed for the weight room, setting the tripod on a bench, phone aimed at the mirror. She loaded the barbell, 60 pounds, and started her squats, counting 1, 2, 3. The shadow came at the 4th rep, tall, sharp in the corner. She kept going, 4, 5, 6, her eyes on the screen, the tripod steady. It didn't move, just stood, a silhouette against the dimness. She finished, turned, empty, the corner bare. She checked it, scuff, scratches, gouge, the smear unchanged. She snapped a photo, flashlight on, and stopped the recording, shadow clear, then gone. She didn't stretch, just walked to the desk, her bag heavy, her videos ready. The guy looked up as she approached, his hoodie low, a faint scar on his cheek. "Hey," she said, firm. "You work nights?" "Yeah," he said, voice low, setting his phone down. "Torin, what's up?" "Lyrian," she said, leaning on the counter. "I'm here every morning, 5 a.m. Something's off in the weight room. Shadow keeps showing up, leaves marks." He frowned, tilting his head. "Shadow?" "Yeah," she said, pulling out her phone. "Look." She played the latest video, her squats, the shadow, the turn, his eyes narrowing as it vanished. 3 nights now, same spot. "And this," she swiped to the photos, scuff, scratches, smear. "Found these." "It's not me." Torin watched, his jaw tightening, then handed it back. "Huh," he said low. "That's weird. No one's here that early, just you." "Exactly," she said sharp. "Logs are clean, but this isn't. You've never seen it." He leaned back, crossing his arms. "I'm here till 6, don't roam much. Weight room's quiet when I check. No shadows, no marks." "They're there," she said, tapping the photos. "Scratches, gouge, this red smear, old, consistent. Something's happening." He sighed, rubbing his scar. "Okay, look, gym's old, been here forever. Weird shit happens, creaks, shadows. Could be the rack, shifting, scraping." "The rack doesn't stand in the mirror," she snapped. "It's a shape, tall, still watching me." He paused, his eyes flicking to the weight room. "Watching?" "Yeah," she said, pocketing her phone. "Every morning, same time, same spot. You've got cameras, check them." "Cameras?" He snorted. "Barely work, grainy as hell, only cover the desk and door. Weight room's blind." "Then come see," she said firm. "Now." He hesitated, then stood, hoodie low. "Fine." He followed her, hands in his pockets, boots loud on the mats. She pushed the weight room door open, flashlight on, and pointed to the corner, scuff, scratches, smear. "There," she said. "Every night." Torin crouched, squinting, running a finger over the gouge. "Ah," he said low. "That's old, worn, not fresh." He checked the smear, frowning. "Rust, maybe." Rack's ancient, could be flaking. It's not rust, she said sharp. Too red, too dry. And the shadow. She played the video again, the silhouette clear. That's not the rack. He watched, his jaw tight. Okay, he said slow. Seen something like that. Years back, when I started. Guy used to lift here, early like you. Tall, quiet, stuck to that corner. Her stomach twisted. Who? Dunno his name, Torin said, standing. Dropped off, quit, moved, whatever. Left scratches, though, dragged his weights, marked the rack. Habit, I guess. Habit, she echoed, the word heavy. He's not here now, no one signs in. Maybe not, he said, shrugging. But the gym remembers old marks, old vibes. You're the only one here now, could be stirring it. Stirring it. She glared. It's watching me, Torin. Every morning. Dunno what to tell you, he said, too casual. Check with Gavin, day guy. He's got old logs, might know. He turned, heading back. I'll sweep later, see if it's gear shifting. She didn't buy it. Not the ease, not the dodge. She grabbed her bag, tripod still rolling, and checked the corner again. Marks unchanged, the smear staring back. She stopped the video, pocketed her phone, and left, the rain soaking her as she crossed the lot. Her hatchback started slow, the heater weak, and she drove home, Torin's words. Jim remembers, ringing in her ears. She locked her door, sank onto her couch, and uploaded the video. Shadow clear, Torin's voice faint in the background. She replayed it, the silhouette steady, the marks sharp in the photos. A guy, years back, tall, quiet, marking the corner. She Googled Calder Fitness again. Nothing new, just stale reviews. She'd find Gavin tomorrow, dig into those logs. The shadow wasn't gear. It was personal, tied to her routine. She went back the next morning. 4:59 a.m. The lot empty, the rain heavy. She swiped in, signed in Lyrian, 5 a.m., and set up on the bike, tripod rolling. The shadow came in the weight room. Same spot, same stillness, mid-squat, watching her through the mirror. She recorded it, turned, empty again, and checked the corner. The marks were there, the smear unchanged. Torin wasn't at the desk, shift over probably, but she'd wait for Gavin, push harder. The shadow wasn't stopping, and neither was she. Lyrian couldn't shake Torin's words. The gym remembers they'd stuck to her like damp clothes, heavy and cold all day long. She'd watched the videos again. For now, the shadow a constant, tall and still, vanishing every time she turned. The photos sat on her laptop, scuff, scratches, smear, proof of something physical, something tied to her routine. Torin's tale of a guy from years back, tall, quiet, marking the corner, nagged at her, half-formed but too close to ignore. She wasn't sleeping, wasn't stopping. She'd find the day guy, Gavin, and dig deeper. The night had been restless, the rain a relentless roar against her window, her bed a battlefield of twisted sheets. Morning came gray and soaked, the storm unrelenting. She dragged herself up, her body aching, and made coffee, black, bitter, a lifeline to her frayed focus. Her notebook lay open. Torin, old guy, marks, Jim remembers. Next to her phone, the latest video paused on that silhouette. She'd go early today, catch Gavin before her shift, force the gym to spill its secrets. She packed her bag, leggings, tank top, sneakers, phone, tripod, flashlight, notebook, and added the USB drive with her recordings. She'd show him, make him talk. The drive to Calder Road was tense, the wipers struggling against the downpour, the laundromat's sign a faint flicker. She pulled in at 8:45 a.m., the lot half full with day crowd cars, the gym's lights harsh through the wet. She swiped in, the beep lost in the hum of morning noise, weights clanking, voices overlapping. A guy was at the desk, young, curly hair, flipping through a clipboard. She approached, her bag over her shoulder, and kept it casual. "Hey," she said, nodding. "You Gavin?" "Yeah," he said, looking up, his eyes bright but tired. "What's up?" "Lyrian," she said, leaning on the counter. "I'm here every morning, 5 a.m. Torin said you've got old logs. Something's off in the weight room." He frowned, setting the clipboard down. "Off how?" "Shadow," she said, pulling out her phone. "Keeps showing up tall, still, in the corner. Leaves marks." She played the latest video. Her squats, the shadow, the turn, his brow creasing as it vanished. "And these," she swiped to the photos, scuff, scratches, smear. "Torin said it's an old guy years back. You know him?" Gavin watched, his jaw tightening, then handed it back. "Ah," he said low. "That's creepy. Yeah, I've got logs, go back a couple years. Torin mentioned a guy. Tall, quiet, she said sharp. Lifted early, marked the corner, scratches, gouges. Said the gym remembers. He snorted, leaning back. Sounds like Torin, half-assed stories. Okay, let me check. He grabbed a binder from under the desk, thick with yellowed pages, and flipped through. Early mornings, couple years ago. Mostly regulars, no names, just IDs. He paused, his finger tracing a line. Here, 5 a.m., consistent 3 years back. Same card every day, then stops. Who? She pressed, her notebook out, pen ready. No name, he said, squinting. Card's old, numbers faded. Cancelled, probably. Guy was a ghost. Came early, left early, no chatter. Marks, she said, tapping the photos. Torin said he scratched the rack. Maybe, Gavin said, shrugging. Weight room's a mess, old gear, dents everywhere. Could be him. He flipped another page, frowning. Wait, complaint, same time. Member said some dude stared too long, creeped him out. Tall, quiet, stuck to the corner. Her stomach twisted. Stared. Yeah, he said, reading. Kept watching, wouldn't talk. Manager brushed it off. Guy stopped showing after. He closed the binder, his eyes narrowing. You think it's him? Dunno, she said, scribbling. Old logs, 5 a.m., cancelled card, complaint, staring. But it fits, same spot, same vibe. He's not here now, no sign-ins. Could have kept the card, Gavin said, too casual. Snuck in, old habit. Happens, people don't let go. Habit, she echoed, the word heavy. Torin said that too. But the smear, red, dry, not rust. He frowned, leaning forward. Red, yeah, she said, swiping to the photo. Near the rack, old, flaky. Ah, he said low. Could be paint, blood, gear gets banged up, bleeds, rust sometimes. He paused, then added, show Torin again, he's on tonight. Push him. She nodded, pocketing her phone. Thanks. Keep those logs, I might need 'em. He waved her off, back to his clipboard. She didn't stay, drove home, the rain a steady roar, Gavin's words, old habit, mixing with Torin's. She'd go back at 5 a.m., confront Torin, show the smear. The shadow wasn't just a memory, it was active, tied to her. She locked her door, sank onto her couch, and replayed the videos. For now, the shadow closer each time. She went back that morning, 4:59 a.m., the lot empty, the rain heavy. She swiped in, signed in Lyrian 5 a.m., and set up on the bike, tripod rolling. Torin was at the desk, hoodie up, phone glowing. She finished cardio, moved to the weight room, and set the tripod. Phone aimed, 60 pounds on the barbell. She started her squats, 1, 2, 3, the shadow flickering in at the 4th rep, tall and still, closer now, near the rack. She kept going, 4, 5, 6, her eyes on the screen, the tripod steady. She finished, turned, empty, the corner bare, and checked the marks, scuff, scratches, smear, unchanged. She stopped the video, saved it, and walked to Torin, her bag heavy. Hey, she said, firm. Look again. She played it, the shadow closer, sharper, then swiped to the smear. Gavin said an old guy, 5 a.m., stared, marked the corner. You said Jim remembers. What's his name? Torin watched, his scar catching the light, then sighed. Kale, he said low. Think that's it, Kale something. Early riser, like you. Quit years back, left scratches, weird vibe. Kale, she repeated, scribbling it. He's not here, no sign-ins. Dunno, he said, shrugging. Kept his card, maybe, snuck until it died. Old guys cling to routines. And this? She tapped the smear. Not rust, too red. He squinted, leaning in. Huh, could be dunno, blood? Gear cuts people, dries, sticks. He leaned back, too casual. I'll check the rack, clean it up. Do that, she said, sharp. But it's watching me every morning. Habit, he said low. You're in his spot. Stirs it up. His spot. She glared. It's my gym now. Sure, he said, hands up. I'll sweep, see what's what. He turned back to his phone, dismissive. She didn't push, not yet. She left, the rain soaking her, the video burning in her pocket. Her hatchback started slow, the heater weak. She drove home, locked her door, and uploaded it. 5 videos now, Kale's name a thread. She Googled Kale Calder fitness. Nothing, just noise. The shadow was him, or his echo, clinging to the corner, her routine waking it. She'd end it tomorrow, force the gym to let go. Lyrian couldn't let Kale's name fade. It had settled in her mind like a weight, heavy and cold, tying the shadow, tall, still, watching, to the scratches, the smear, the gym's quiet corner. She'd watched the videos, 5 now, each one sharper, closer, until her eyes burned, the silhouette a constant in her routine. Torin's habit, Gavin's logs, the complaint of staring, it all pointed to a man who'd left but hadn't gone. She wasn't scared, not anymore, just determined, ready to end it, take her space back. Sleep evaded her, the rain a steady hum against her window, her bed a restless mess. Morning came gray and damp, the storm easing into a drizzle. She dragged herself up, her body heavy, and made coffee black, scalding, a jolt to her frayed resolve. Her notebook lay open. Kale, 5 a.m., scratches staring. Next to her phone, the latest video paused on that shadow, closer than ever. She'd go back one last time, same place, and break it, whatever it was. She packed her bag with purpose. Leggings, tank top, sneakers, phone, tripod, flashlight, notebook, and added a small screwdriver from her toolbox. Not to fight, just to pry, to check the rack, the marks. The drive to Calder Road was quiet, the wipers slow, the laundromat sign a faint glow. She pulled in at 4:58 a.m., her hatchback alone, the lot slick with rain. She swiped in, the beep sharp, and signed the sheet, Lyrian, 5 a.m. The gym was silent, the lights buzzing, the air cool with rubber and rust. Torin was at the desk, hoodie up, phone glowing. She nodded as she passed, her eyes on the weight room. She set up on the bike, tripod rolling, and pedaled slow, her legs steady, her breath even, the mirrors reflecting her alone, until they didn't. She finished cardio at 5:15 a.m., grabbed her bag, and moved to the weight room. She set the tripod, phone aimed at the mirror, and loaded the barbell, 60 pounds, squats, her routine a weapon now. She counted 1, 2, 3, the shadow flickering in at the 4th rep, tall and still near the rack. She kept going, 4, 5, 6, her eyes on the screen, the tripod steady. It didn't move, just watched, a silhouette sharper than ever. She finished, turned, empty, the corner bare. She checked it, scuff, scratches, gouge, smear, all there unchanged. She stopped the video, saved it, and pulled out her flashlight and screwdriver. She crouched by the rack, the beam steady, and traced the scratches, old, clustered, worn into the steel. She wedged the screwdriver into the gouge, prying gently. The metal groaned, a faint flake of red falling free. She caught it, dry, flaky, blood-like, not rust. Her stomach twisted, but she didn't stop, just scraped more, the flakes piling on the mat. She stood, flashlight sweeping the corner, mat's wall rack, and saw it. A seam, faint but real, where the rack met the wall. She ran her fingers over it, rough, uneven, a panel loose under the paint. She wedged the screwdriver in, prying slow. The seam popped, a thin gap opening. Dust spilled out, the air sharp with rust and something stale. She aimed the flashlight inside, dark, narrow, a hollow space behind the rack, scratched and scuffed, a rusted barbell wedged tight. Her breath caught. She snapped photos, phone steady, flash bright, the gap, the barbell, the flakes on the mat. She grabbed her notebook. 5:25 a.m., hollow behind rack, red flakes, old bar. And stepped back, the shadow absent now, the mirror reflecting only her. She didn't touch the barbell, just left it, a relic of Kale's routine, trapped in the gym's bones. She walked to Torin, her bag heavy, her evidence ready. "Hey," she said firm, stopping at the desk. "Found it, behind the rack." She showed the photos, gap, barbell, flakes, his eyes narrowing. Kale's spot, hollow, scratched, blood on the steel. Torin leaned forward, squinting, his scar catching the light. "Shit," he said low. "That's old. Wall's been there forever. Never checked it." "Blood," she said sharp. "Not rust, dried, flaked off. He cut himself, didn't he?" "Maybe," he said slow. "Kale was rough, dragged gear, banged it up. Could have bled, left it. And the shadow." She played the video, closer, sharper, gone. "That's him, his habit, stuck here." Torin sighed, rubbing his face. "Look, he quit, years back. Card's dead, he's gone. Jim's old. Holds shit like that. You're in his slot, waking it." "Waking it?" She glared. "It's my time, fix it." "Yeah," he said, nodding. "I'll get maintenance, seal it, clean it. No more Kale." She didn't trust the ease, but she nodded. "Do it." And left, the rain light now, the lot empty. Her hatchback started slow, the heater humming, and she drove home, the photos and video a weight lifted. She locked her door, sank onto her couch, and uploaded them, 5 videos, the gap, the flakes. She Googled Kale Calder fitness. Nothing, just echoes. Gavin texted later. Torin called, walls patched, racks scrubbed. She went back the next morning, 4:59 a.m., the lot quiet, the rain gone. She swiped in, signed in, Lyrian 5 a.m., and set up on the bike, tripod rolling. The weight room was different. The corner patched, paint fresh, the rack cleaned, no smear, no scratches. She did her squats, 1, 2, 3, no shadow, just her in the mirror. She finished, checked the corner, smooth, silent, Kale's marks erased. Torin wasn't there, shift over, but the gym felt lighter, hers again. She stretched on the mat, the mirrors reflecting only her, the hum steady. She kept the videos, the photos, just in case, but the shadow didn't return. Kale's habit, his blood, his stare, had clung to the gym, her routine stirring it till she broke it free. The rain stopped, the mornings quieted, and Lyrian stayed. 5 a.m., her space, her control. The corner slept, silent at last.